Do you love novels, but don't have time to read thousands of chapters? Imagine listening to your favorite stories anytime, anywhere, while driving, working, or relaxing. Here, you'll find premium audiobooks from Pocket FM, Audible, Webnovel, Wuxia, and more, all in one place. Every novel is a one-time payment, no subscriptions, no monthly fees, lifetime access. The full novel list and prices are in the description below. Once you choose a novel, just DM me on Telegram, WhatsApp, or Discord. After payment via PayPal, Ko-fi, or Patreon, you get permanent access to the audiobook on Telegram. And if the novel is ongoing, all future updates are included. Check the description, pick your story, and start listening today. Before we start the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Enjoy, and let's go.
51. Chapter 51. The days pass. 2. Time passed so quickly that it seemed like a silently lit fuse, burning from end to end before anyone realized there was fire. During those days that slipped away like fine sand between the fingers, Renzu maintained a meticulous routine. Every morning, he attended to the crowds seeking his medical skills at the Yun family residence. With each successful treatment, he conquered not only gratitude but also the respect of a large part of the profound practitioners in the illusory demon realm in a short time. He had gained favors from all the guardian families and even from a good portion of the famous and renowned profound practitioners. Many of them with their own duties, territories, sects, and responsibilities. But that was not all. In the afternoons, Renzu used to walk through the demon imperial city, offering treatment to the sick without asking for absolutely anything in return. He descended into the deepest alleys, touched wounds that others dared not even look at, and cared for thousands of common people with the same seriousness as he would treat an emperor. Thus, without needing to announce his deeds or raise his voice, a belief began to take shape among the inhabitants. For many, Renzu was no longer just the #1 doctor in the illusory demon realm, he was a saint reborn from ancient legends. And knowing that this same man would be the future husband of their ruler, the little demon empress, left the people deeply moved. To them, it was as if destiny had united a cruel empress and a living saint to protect the entire realm, two sides of the same coin that could govern with an iron fist and benevolence. But Renzu not only consolidated this good reputation and advanced his plans, he also dedicated a large part of his time to the libraries, whether that of the Yun family or the illusory demon royal family itself. There, he delved into countless subjects that broadened his worldview and helped him mature in aspects he previously lacked. In addition, he maintained the habit of cultivating for at least an hour every day and still reserved part of his time to be by his future wife's side. And so, another day arrived. The morning in the illusory demon realm dawned slowly, yet majestically, as if the sky itself hesitated before revealing its light. The horizon shimmered with a soft glow, a pale gold that spread through the bluish mist that always rested over the imperial city. The light filtered between the ancestral towers, touching jade rooftops, dissipating the shadows clinging to the alleys, and awakening the spirit gardens with a moist dew shine. The air was fresh, almost cold, carrying the perfume of spiritual flowers that only bloomed at dawn, translucent petals, delicate like fine glass, releasing a light aroma that mingled with the earthy smell of the ancient palace stones. And, amid all this powerful serenity, stood the Yun clan pavilion, where Renzu usually stayed every morning. Young Patriarch, this is the 9,000-year pure yang ginseng that General Chu sent to thank you for curing his right eye. Oh, thank you for bringing it. Young Patriarch, these 150 kilograms of purple yang jade were sent by the Duke Z Palace to thank you for curing the injury to the profound veins of their third young master. Oh, thank you for bringing it. Young Patriarch, this is a 9 evil stars protection pearl, sent by the Duke Xian Palace. There are only 3 of these in the entire illusory demon realm. Oh, thank you for bringing it. Wouldn't it be better to store it in the medicinal pavilion, young Patriarch? I will need all these items I've already donated a part to the family. Don't worry. Yes, yes. Young Patriarch, the young patriarch of the Su family, Su Zhijan, wishes to see you. Oh, give it to me. Su Zhijan? Bring him here. Renzu yawned, finally sitting properly for the first time in a long while. In a short time, Su Zhijan entered, but he did not walk alone. A luxuriously dressed girl was by his side. She seemed to be 16 or 17, with skin white as jade and ruby lips, an extremely charming girl. Her delicate head was tilted, her steps graceful, and both her hands were nervously holding the belt at her waist. From entering until reaching Renzu, she had only secretly glanced at Renzu once and did not dare to lift her head to look again. Renzu was seated with the tranquil posture of someone accustomed to carrying worlds on his shoulders without ever showing effort. The beams of morning light passed through the thin curtain of the pavilion and rested on him as if summoned by the young man's own will. Those golden lines descended through his black hair like liquid cascades, illuminating an impeccable outline that seemed sculpted with impossible precision. His features were so harmonious that they seemed to defy nature itself. The smooth line of the nose, the cold and elegant arch of the eyebrows, the deep and unfathomable shine of the eyes that, even half closed from the boredom of that dawn, carried a quietness that few living beings could sustain. It was a beauty that did not fit into simple metaphors. It was a beauty that could not be described in mere words. He was simply a figure that destroyed previous notions of aesthetics and rebuilt everything around him, forcing anyone who saw him to understand, in that moment, that there was something beyond human perfection. Although she had only secretly glanced at him, the girl took a deep breath, an almost inaudible sound, and her knees weakened for an instant. It was the kind of reaction she would never have allowed anyone to witness, but before Renzu, she lost the control she had preserved her entire life. Her heart, previously steady and shy, beat so hard that it shook her chest as if trying to escape. The skin white as jade blushed softly, as if the flush had been brushed there by the light touch of a celestial artist. In her eyes, large, delicate, and slightly trembling, a light emerged that combined astonishment, enchantment, and something even more dangerous, surrender, because she realized, just like so many other women, and so many men, that resisting Renzu's appearance was as useless as trying to order the sun not to rise. It was a feeling that bypassed logical reasoning, that ignored status, power, lineage, pride, or modesty. It was a silent truth that hung over the illusory demon realm. Whoever saw him up close would inevitably fall. Most people talked about it, and only now did she understand that fact. Nephew Yun. Upon seeing Renzu, Su Zhizhan quickly walked a few steps forward with a voice full of gratitude. You did such a great kindness for my Su family, and yet, due to some trivial delays, I came to thank you only today. This really is my fault, and I hope Nephew Yun can forgive us. What are you saying, Patriarch Su? Renzu stood up to greet him and smiled. It was nothing much, so you shouldn't worry too much about it. How has Senior Su been these days? Su Zhizhan smiled and replied. Recently, grandfather has changed, completely different from his old lifeless behavior. He is in great spirits these days. Every day is like he has been reborn. Nephew Yun's medicine is even more miraculous than we anticipated. In these short 7 days, 70 to 80% of the injuries to the profound entrances of the profound veins have already healed. After a few more days, he will definitely recover fully. In these last days, grandfather has been worried about what kind of gift he should give you as thanks. There is no need for a gift. Being able to help Senior Su recover is my honor. Patriarch, you still haven't introduced? Who is this? Renzu's gaze traced the girl beside Su Zhizhan. He had a slight impression of this girl and felt she was a member of the Su family. From what he remembered when he was at the Su family residence, he had sensed her aura from some corner. As a celebrity of the Demon Imperial City, there were many people looking at him from every corner of the Su family, and it seemed she was one of them. Moreover, this was all too familiar. Seeing that Renzu took the initiative to mention her, that girl lowered her head even more. Su Zhizhan replied hastily. This is my younger sister, Su Zhishi. She is 17 years old. Zhishi, why haven't you greeted young Patriarch Yun yet? The girl stepped forward and bowed slightly. Little sister greets big brother Yun. After saying that, her delicate head quickly lowered again as a red stain silently blushed from her jade face to the tips of her ears. So, it's little sister Zhishi. I didn't expect Patriarch Su, who has the aura of a fierce tiger, to have such a reserved little sister. Come, sit down, Renzu said with a smile. Then he thought to himself, Su Zhizhan actually has a sister? It seems as if they aren't even direct siblings. But why did he bring his sister here? No, thank you. Su Zhizhan waved a hand and then became embarrassed. Nephew Yun actually. This time I came because of my little sister. Su Zhizhan stopped speaking. Then, a concentrated profound sound transmission sounded beside Renzu's ears. When Nephew Yun was treating my grandfather that day, my sister was actually in the next room. When nephew left, my little sister has been distracted and without appetite. Grandfather said she has a heart disease that only Nephew Yun can cure. That's why I had to bring my little sister to Nephew Yun no matter what, and he even said that once I bring her, I must leave immediately. Renzu maintained a neutral expression, but he was not surprised by this. In fact, he kind of expected something like this to happen. Ahem. Su Zhizhan coughed lightly once, then said with cupped hands, my little sister is sick, but with Nephew Yun's medical skills that transcend the heavens, this shouldn't be a problem. Oh, my father just sent me a sound transmission saying that something big happened in our family. He wants me to return immediately after bringing my sister here. So, I'll leave everything to nephew Yoon. Once she has fully recovered, I will definitely treat nephew Yoon to some good wine. I will leave now. Before he had finished his sentence, Su Zhijian had already turned and left, disappearing immediately, without leaving even a chance for Renzu to speak. He sighed mentally. He could perfectly guess old Su's thoughts. The elder was definitely not someone without integrity. In fact, he was extremely perceptive. After investigating the young man who would become the future ruler of the illusory demon realm, old Su concluded that Renzu's achievements were perhaps completely unimaginable, and that without even thinking about the future even now, as a divine profound realm cultivator alongside the little demon empress, he was already incomparable, someone destined to reach heights far beyond this level. To save the little demon empress, Renzu did not hesitate to risk his own life by entering the Golden Crow Lightning Flame Valley. That alone already proved he was not a bad person. On the contrary, he was someone who valued relationships and justice. But that had been months ago. What really mattered was that, in recent days, his constant benevolence revealed even more of his true nature. He was someone genuinely kind and extraordinarily powerful, yet he also carried a ruthless side. Old Su's own son had commented that Renzu had executed several traitor monarchs without even blinking, like chopping vegetables. This combination of unshakable kindness and decisive cruelty was what made his figure even more fearsome, and, paradoxically, even more worthy of respect. He simply was the most perfect grandson-in-law candidate in the world. Among families of similar status, all those with daughters, as long as they had the minimum sense, would inevitably think of him as the #1 candidate for son-in-law. However, the demon imperial city was still unstable after the recent chaos, so no one seemed willing to propose marriage to the Yun family. Or perhaps they simply did not dare. After all, there was also the fact that he was the future husband of the little demon empress. As for becoming his wife, better to forget it. But a concubine? That, at least, was still possible. Thus, old Su promptly decided to send someone personally to deliver the goods. Su Jishi, the princess of the Su family, was, in his eyes, a suitable match for Renzu. Their ages matched perfectly, her temperament was the kind that aroused affection in men, and moreover, she was a stunning beauty. Old Su did not believe that Renzu would refuse such a gift. The little demon empress was, of course, another story. But he trusted both Renzu's kindness and his ruler's dignity. He believed that Renzu would not allow anything to happen to Su Jishi, and also that the little demon empress would not be cruel enough to eliminate a young woman who, at most, could become a concubine of her future husband. Upon learning of old Su's plans, Renzu showed not the slightest emotional fluctuation. He had no interest in Su Jishi no matter how beautiful she was. She did not attract him. He already had by his side the little demon empress, the #1 beauty of the entire illusory demon realm, and that was enough. The problem was not desire, but how to handle this situation. After all, rejecting such a direct gesture from a great family was never something simple. How would he resolve this? While Renzu thought about this, Su Jishi stood silently in place, and her shame did not diminish for quite a long time. Her delicate head hung low, not daring to look at Renzu again. She was nervous and blushed embarrassedly. But it did not seem that she rejected Su Hongba's extremely absurd arrangement. The two remained silent, and the atmosphere became extremely strange. In these types of situations, it was obviously improper to make the girl speak first. Renzu took a few steps forward. When he approached her, he could practically hear the nervous beats of her heart. Where? In your body do you feel uncomfortable? Su Jishi nervously tightened the belt of her dress. Seeing that the girl did not know how to respond, Renzu smiled as he extended his hand. Give me your hand, let me check your pulse. 70 to 80% of someone's condition can be measured just by checking the pulse. Seeing that Renzu stretched out a hand, Su Jishi opened her mouth, and then slowly extended her pure white little hand. She had only extended it halfway before Renzu grasped it. Ah! Su Jishi cried out lightly, subconsciously retracting her little hand. However, it was firmly held by Renzu, making the red color on her face spread straight to her snowy neck as she lowered her head so much that it reached her chest. This was the first time her jade hands had been held by a man, and the flaming temperature of a man, as well as the sensation of Renzu's hands, almost made her heart leap out of her chest. Su Jishi's hands were trembling, so trembling that, for an instant, Renzu imagined her pulse might disappear from how fast it was fluttering. To ease that suffocating tension, and because he knew that young women of that age felt easily intimidated, he took a simple but effective action. He slightly loosened the pressure of his fingers around her wrist and averted his gaze to a neutral point on the table beside them. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it clearly said that he would not invade her space more than necessary. Renzu maintained a calm and professional tone. Your pulse is accelerated. But there is nothing wrong with your body. The words were tranquil, almost subtle, But for Su Jishi, they fell like a warm relief, a breath of peace crossing the chaos her heart insisted on provoking. Still, she could not prevent her hand from trembling within Renzu's. He noticed, and, perhaps to relieve the tension, or maybe just because that disoriented expression was so obviously adorable, he raised one corner of his lips. Actually, he murmured, with a light and unlikely gleam in his eyes. I think I've discovered the problem. Su Jishi swallowed hard, her heart beating even faster. Discovered? Yes. Renzu leaned in a little, like someone about to reveal an inconvenient secret. You are before a terrible man. Su Jishi's beautiful eyes trembled slightly. She opened her lips and looked palely at the very close Renzu. Then, suddenly, a pfff sound was heard right before she started laughing. The girl's smile was bright and beautiful, warming to the heart. If it were any other man, he would have lost his mind. But Renzu was not just anyone. After a short silence, he said weakly, I just said I'm a bad man, aren't you afraid? You're even laughing. Su Jishi used her hand to cover her lips, and her face was pink as she said lightly, a really bad guy wouldn't say he's bad. Renzu opened his mouth, then said helplessly, no one listens when a bad guy tells the truth these days? He. Su Jishi laughed lightly. Renzu's incomparably frank words did not achieve the expected result, but it greatly diminished her nervousness. If you are a bad guy, then there wouldn't even be a bad guy in the Demon Imperial City. Why do you think that? Do I look that much like a good person? Renzu asked while pointing to himself, releasing the girl's wrist. Su Jishi blinked slowly, as if her mind was still trying to comprehend Renzu's question. Her lips parted again, but no words came out. It was as if every thought that arose simply dissolved upon encountering his face. Renzu raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the sudden silence. So do I look that much like a good person? He repeated, this time with a slight touch of irony, as if he were really considering the possibility that this was an insult. Su Jishi finally found her voice, even if trembling. I don't think that's it, she murmured, averting her gaze as her ears turned red again. It's just that, it's very hard to believe that someone with this appearance, she swallowed hard, could be a bad guy. Renzu tilted his head, crossing his arms in a gesture too casual for someone being accused or absolved of evil. So you're saying that beautiful people can't be bad? He teased, with a playful gleam in his eyes. Su Jishi almost choked on her own breath. I didn't mean that. She waved her hands, terrified at the idea of saying some absurd offense. I just think that your gaze is too kind for a villain. Renzu approached her face just enough for Su Jishi to enter silent panic, but not so much as to invade her space. Just enough to see the reaction. Really? He asked softly. Which part of my gaze seems kind? Su Jishi became motionless. Completely motionless. Like a statue just caught by the sun. Her heart beat so hard that Renzu could hear her pulse even from afar. She tried to speak. She really tried. But all that came out was, eh. And then she lowered her head so quickly that she almost hit her chin on her chest, covering half her face with her hands, as if that were enough to protect her from the embarrassment. Renzu sighed. See, he said casually, that's why I say I'm dangerous. You can barely complete a sentence near me. This is definitely not healthy. Grand dash. Su Jishi choked on her own words, her hands still covering her face. Big brother Yoon is making fun of me. Just a little, admitted Renzu, with the naturalness of someone who saw absolutely no problem in it. But it's for your own health. If you keep trembling like this, I'll end up thinking you're really sick. She bit her lip, trying to prevent another smile. See? It worked. Seeing her smile, Renzu crossed his arms again and commented, now you seem less about to faint. I would never faint, she murmured, still without the courage to lift her face. Are you sure? Your pulse told another story. Grand Yoon. And Su Jishi felt her heart melt in the second silent explosion of that morning. For an instant, she completely forgot about her grandfather's absurd plan, the initial shame, the distance between their positions, and even the fact that this man was destined for another woman. Renzu, realizing that the tension had diminished enough to re-establish the conversation, returned to speaking in a calmer tone. Su Jishi and Renzu spent an entire morning together. It was only until the afternoon had arrived that Su Jishi began to leave. Throughout the afternoon, everyone in the Yoon family had the mutual understanding not to disturb them, which was the reason all who went to visit Renzu were turned away in the morning. Although he got rid of work, he had to deal with a jealous wife, who heard about this. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 15 chapters ahead, for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right, cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 52. Chapter 52. The Days Pass, 3/N. Everyone, I really need your support this week. Every Power Stone you send makes a huge difference for the story's visibility and its growth on the platform. If you're enjoying what you're reading, please consider supporting. It helps me keep delivering quality chapters and maintaining a steady release pace. As a thank you, I've prepared some special goals. Rank 20 to 50. I'll release 2 extra chapters next Sunday. Rank 10 to 20. I'll release 5 extra chapters next Sunday. Rank 1 to 10. If we manage to reach this achievement, I'll release 10 extra chapters. I know reaching those higher ranks is tough, but it's not impossible, and with your support, any goal becomes more attainable. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and let's aim for another milestone together. Renzu slowly pushed open the door of his humble cabin, expecting to find the usual tranquil silence as always. But as soon as he crossed the threshold, he noticed something wrong. Very wrong. And then he saw her. The little demon empress was standing right in the middle of the room, coldly like a frozen doll, her skin white as freshly fallen snow, eyes black as a starless night, small and perfectly delicate face, small and delicate body, enveloped in a heavy aura of death. She had her arms crossed, chin slightly raised, rigid posture, and her eyebrows furrowed. So furrowed that they seemed to threaten to turn into 2 sharp swords. And her expression, if someone didn't know who she was, they would think it was a wife waiting for her husband to return after spending the entire day talking with another. In fact, could the little demon empress really make such an expression? Renzu stopped at the door, frozen, eyes blinking slowly. Am I dreaming? He murmured, too low, but not low enough to escape her. Her words were cold and carried a terrifying cohesion behind them, enough to make any monarch kneel. Not him, of course, but still, he felt a shiver run up his spine. He straightened his posture and tried to flash an innocent smile, the kind of smile that fooled half the realm and made any man or woman fall madly in love. Good afternoon, wife. Don't call me wife like that. She spoke coldly and tightened her arms against her chest even more. Not today. Renzu cleared his throat. May I know why exactly? You're looking at me as if you're going to judge me for a war crime? The little demon empress's lips trembled, but not a single sound emerged from them. She looked in his direction silently for a moment before saying, You spent the entire morning locked in the pavilion with that girl from the Su family. Mentioning that matter made the little demon empress's heart beat in a strange, almost uncomfortable way. Jealousy was a new feeling for her, irritating, untimely, and completely out of her control. As the absolute ruler of the entire illusory demon realm, she had never experienced anything even remotely similar. For her, emotions had always been tools, not weaknesses. Fear, resentment, hatred, pain. All of that could be ignored, crushed, or molded until it served the necessary purpose. From a very young age, she had learned to tame any feeling that could tarnish the dignity of her royal lineage. That was what was expected of someone like her. But jealousy was different. That hot and irritating tightness in her chest, that irrational sense of threat, that contradictory desire to face him and, at the same time, look away. Absolutely nothing had prepared her for that. It was irritating. It was shameful. And, at the same time, it was impossible to deny. The little demon empress was cruel, ruthless, and domineering by nature. The entire world bowed before her. Patriarchs feared her gaze. Monarchs trembled at her voice. Her name was synonymous with absolute power, unquestionable authority. Yet, before that man alone, something within her wavered. The imperial posture, sustained throughout her entire life, seemed to falter for a brief and intolerable instant, as if his presence challenged rules that not even she, the supreme ruler, could impose on her own heart. And recognizing that was what infuriated her the most. Despite her cold tyranny, she was someone capable of opening her heart, not to flattery, nor to empty courtship, and even less to insistent kindnesses that she considered a waste of time. She despised that. What moved her was a much fiercer and more primitive instinct: possession, envy. The simple threat of losing something she deemed hers awakened in her a feeling she had never experienced. And that was what caused the jealousy she felt at that moment. After hearing her words, and imagining what was going through her mind, Renzu immediately realized that someone in that residence, perhaps everyone, had a tongue that was far too long. He sighed inwardly. I was literally working. Working. She raised an eyebrow so high it almost left her face. Is that what you call holding her hand for half an hour? Renzu opened his mouth, and closed it, and opened it again. Ah! She narrowed her eyes dangerously. Ah! He cleared his throat. My dear, Renzu. Okay. Not dear. Forbidden for now. He tried another approach. I was just checking her pulse. She was too nervous to speak, and the little demon empress, took a step forward. She was nervous? She repeated coldly, with the voice of someone about to burn an entire city. Why, I wonder? Renzu stared at her. She stared back. He blinked. And then, he smiled. A slow smile. Beautiful. Dishonest. The one he wisely used sparingly, especially in front of her. It wasn't my fault if the girl fell in love with a beautiful appearance. I mean, have you seen how handsome your husband is? It's hard for women to resist my charm. Silence. The air froze. The little demon empress remained completely motionless for 3 full seconds. And then, Ren-zu. Her voice came out so thin, so furious, and so adorably hurt that his own heart skipped a beat. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. Okay, I deserved that. I admit it. It was a bad joke. She turned her face away with a brusque movement. Her cheeks flushed, not from shame, from jealousy. You! Her voice trembled, subtle and genuinely hurt. You spent hours with another girl. And you're still joking with me? Renzu stopped. All the teasing evaporated. He approached slowly, slow steps, careful, as if approaching a rare and frightened animal. When he got close enough, he tilted his head slightly to try to see her face. But she turned even more. He took a deep breath. I just treated someone. Nothing more. She didn't respond. Renzu slowly unraveled her arms with gentleness. She allowed it, though her chin remained defiantly turned to the side. Then, holding her chin with just 2 fingers, he made her look at him. Her eyes were shining. I would never touch any woman, for any reason other than medical. She didn't blink. He brought his face closer. And you know that. Her eyebrows wavered. Her breathing too. Renzu smiled again. But this time, it wasn't provocative. Just calm, sincere, soft. Just as you are my wife, I am also your husband. There's no need to be jealous over something so trivial. She finally blinked. And blushed. Violently. And Renzu pulled her by the waist, very lightly, but enough to make her stumble over her own heart. If you want, he murmured, his voice too low, too warm. I can prove it as many times as you deem necessary. The little demon empress, future absolute ruler of the entire illusory demon realm, took a step back so quickly it seemed like teleportation. Renzu! He laughed softly. So we're good. She turned her face away again. But this time, he saw the small smile hidden at the corner of her mouth. Not entirely. Renzu raised an eyebrow. Then what do I need to do to make up for it? She let out a small, almost imperceptible imperial hum. You will accompany me for the rest of the day. Just that. And you won't look at anyone else. Renzu smiled sideways. The whole time? Yes. He took a step toward her, leaning dangerously close. And if I look at you too much? She swallowed hard. That doesn't count. Renzu smiled calmly, observing the little demon empress regain her composure. Or, at least, pretend she had regained it. His black eyes, deep and always so calm, reflected a simple, direct and accurate thought. Anyone who dared say she was heartless clearly had never spent enough time by her side. He had lived with that woman intimately, more intimately than any living person. He knew better than anyone that, behind the imperial coldness, there was someone extremely kind when it came to the man she loved. Kind not in the common, sweet, or submissive sense, but in the fierce, silent, and absolute sense. She became a devoted wife when she was with him, someone who trusted him, depended on him, and above all, placed him in a position that no one had ever occupied before. She was authoritarian with the entire world. But with him, it was different. Before him, the little demon empress became obedient, attentive, and vulnerable even, especially when they were alone in the bedroom. There, where no expectations or watching eyes existed, she did everything he asked, dedicating herself to pleasing him in the best possible way. And now she was jealous too. He could still see the trace of that emotion in her eyes, an almost imperceptible gleam, but impossible to ignore. A bit of discomfort, a bit of irritation, a bit of that silent fear of losing something she didn't even know she feared losing, and a pride so immense that it prevented her from admitting anything out loud. None of that surprised him. In fact, he found it completely natural. Regardless of the world, culture, or era, a woman who truly loves feels jealousy when her man gives too much attention to another. That wouldn't change even in a place where having a harem was socially normal, politically useful, and even expected. The problem always lay in how it was portrayed. In the original story, everything seemed unrealistic, superficial. The women accepted everything too quickly, too soon, without resistance, without developing deep bonds, without showing their natural insecurities. It was as if the protagonist simply accumulated disposable pieces of affection. But real love doesn't work that way. Real bonds don't work that way. In other words, there was no real reason for him to be surprised by her jealousy emerging so suddenly. She was human, in the end, human in her own way, with her own layers, her own limits, and the intensity that always accompanied her. Moreover, this world was no longer the story he remembered from his past life. It no longer followed the script he knew, nor the paths he had read. Everything was different, especially her. And why wouldn't it be? His presence, his choices, his words. All of that had changed the fate of many people, including hers. He shouldn't be surprised by an emotional development that simply didn't exist in the original work. It was natural for the people around to change. It was natural for new feelings to appear. After all, that version of the little demon empress, vulnerable, jealous, intensely attached to him, was a direct result of his influence. And, thinking about it, he didn't find that bad. Not at all. Renzu let the thought escape slowly, like hot smoke on a cold night. And then, without saying anything else, he simply pulled her. The little demon empress barely had time to react when his arm wrapped around her waist. That thin, delicate, and dangerously fragile waist to his touch, and brought her closer. Her body stiffened in the same instant, an automatic reflex of someone who had always lived unconsciously on guard. But Renzu didn't squeeze her hard. His hand rested on the curve of her back, warm, firm, secure. He tilted his head, his face approaching slowly, giving her all the time in the world to pull back, but, of course, she didn't pull back. The little demon empress froze, yes, but she didn't flee. Renzu smiled lightly upon seeing her hold her breath, her chin trembling just a fraction before hiding the expression. He approached his lips and placed a soft kiss on hers, a calm, intimate touch, warm enough to melt the ice she pretended to carry. When he pulled away just enough to look at her, the little demon empress's eyes, which opened to meet his, trembled. Her face still lifted with that stubborn pride, but the blush betrayed everything her mouth would never admit. She blinked. "You're trying to manipulate me?" she murmured, very low, her voice call. Renzu rested his forehead against hers slowly, in a gesture too intimate for anyone else to dare dream. "If I were trying," he whispered, his tone warm, hoarse, "you would have already given in completely." She inhaled sharply, her fingers pressing against his clothing. "I don't give in so easily, husband. Don't think you can deceive this empress with sweet words, or by taking advantage like this." Renzu smiled, that calm and dangerous smile that only appeared when he truly knew he had one. "But you just gave in." The little demon empress opened her mouth, indignant, ready to deny. But Renzu didn't give her a chance. He pulled her a little more, the embrace closing slowly, with a gentleness so patient that it made her crumble inside. She rested her hands on his chest and took a deep breath, fighting against the impulse to hide her face, and failing miserably. She swallowed hard, her eyes shining. "I just don't like it when other women get close to you." Renzu could swear he had never heard anything so precious in his life. He ran his thumb over her cheek, an extremely light touch, almost reverent. "Good," he murmured, with that rare sincerity he used only with her. "Because I also don't like it when other men look at you." The little demon empress trembled. She tried to turn her face to hide the expression, and he held her chin again, firm, gentle, and made her face him. "Come," he said softly. "I'll accompany you, the whole day, the way you want." Her eyes softened, just a little. "And you won't look at other women?" Renzu tilted his face until his lips almost touched hers again. "I only look at you." The sound she made, small and swallowed before escaping, would have made any sovereign of the illusory demon realm panic, but not Renzu. He held her tighter by the waist, and she didn't resist, nor did she try, because in that moment she was his, completely his, and she knew it, even if she would never admit it out loud. 53. Chapter 53. The Empress claims her husband. Nearly half a month had passed. Renzu's days had become surprisingly predictable. He had settled into a routine that, though simple, carried with it a strangely comfortable tranquility. Every morning, even before the sun had fully risen, he could already be found either in the medical pavilion or crossing the entire illusory demon realm to put his medical skills into practice. Ordinary patients, the elderly, the young, injured cultivators, members of great families. It didn't matter who they were, he treated everyone without hesitation. Each successful healing further solidified the image the people had come to attribute to him, that of an immortal. His otherworldly appearance, combined with his silent benevolence, perfectly shaped this almost divine figure walking among them. His reputation, already enormous, simply exploded during these days. Though he had accumulated countless titles over time, the ones that stood out most were these. Among the common people, he was known as the benevolent immortal saint. Among the nobility, he was called the demon consort emperor or young patriarch Yun. But everyone, absolutely everyone, trusted him, and that was exactly what he wanted. In the afternoons, he vanished completely, refusing to treat anyone who came seeking help. He knew that if he healed everyone at any hour, people would begin to see his kindness as an obligation. Gratitude would turn into expectation. Expectation would become demand. And demand would inevitably become abuse. In the illusory demon realm, excessive kindness could be mistaken for weakness, and he was not weak. The afternoons were reserved solely for himself. He needed to cultivate, train his deepest arts, and refine resources into pills he would use in the future, for he was already preparing for the journey to the profound sky continent. Moreover, he was on the verge of completing the path of darkness in his cultivation method, the 10 extreme das, and he needed that time to advance quickly and fully master that elemental law. And when he was not cultivating, he was in the libraries. Not only the Yun families, but also those of the guardian families, which had opened their doors to him without hesitation. It was almost amusing to see how the elders tried to appear casual while granting him access to rooms that had previously been practically forbidden to outsiders. Of course, secret areas still existed. Each family guarded its own secrets. But even so, Renzu had access to far more knowledge than most, and he absorbed it rapidly. He studied everything that caught his interest. Over the past few months, he had read countless books, becoming knowledgeable in nearly every subject one could imagine. His perfect memory proved extremely useful in these moments. A single glance was enough for him to remember every detail, no matter how minute. At night, however, his routine changed completely. Renzu almost always went to the palace. Sometimes he entered through the main gate, greeting the guards politely with a discreet nod. Other times, he appeared through the side corridors, walking calmly as if it were the most natural thing, and, in a way, it already was. At first, the servants would tense up, pausing in their tasks when they saw him. Now, they merely lowered their heads in respect, and then exchanged knowing glances. After all, no marriage announcement had been made, but in practice, for the entire illusory demon realm, they were already husband and wife. He had grown accustomed to the spacious halls, the silent corridors, and the curious glances. He had learned the names of some servants, their routines, the way they cared for the little demon empress. It was a small world within the world, and Renzu had become part of it without even noticing. And at the end of each day, the little demon empress was always waiting for him. Sometimes she sat on the veranda, gazing at the moon. Other times she read reports with a furrowed brow or stood still, arms crossed, projecting an air of irritation even when she wasn't truly angry. But regardless of how she appeared, she was always there, always waiting for him. After so many days following this routine, the day had finally arrived. The long-awaited moment of the marriage announcement. Great Demon Imperial Hall. It was already noon. The patriarchs of the 12 guardian families and the dukes of the duke palaces were all present. No one dared be absent. Accompanying them were other leading figures. After all, the little demon empress had personally ordered them all to attend and said she had a great matter to announce. The Great Demon Imperial Hall glowed beneath the golden midday light filtering through tall stained glass windows that cast colorful mosaics across the polished black marble floor. Columns carved with motifs of golden crows rose to the vaulted ceiling, and ancestral tapestries hung from the walls, recounting in threads of gold the history of the illusory demon realm. Long tables arranged in a semicircle were laden with exotic delicacies. Grilled meats from profound beasts, luminescent fruits harvested from sacred mountains, wines aged in spiritual jade barrels. The aroma was a symphony of spices and gentle smoke, mingled with the clinking of goblets and the murmur of conversations oscillating between courtesy and speculation. The Yun family had quickly become the center of attention at the banquet, as patriarchs and dukes took every initiative to approach and toast with them. However, after drinking the wine, they would immediately use profound energy to dissolve its effects, lest the rapid intoxication cause them to forget their manners before the little demon empress. At the center of the hall, the Yun family occupied a table. Yun Qinghong, with his serene posture and shrewd eyes, raised a wine goblet, exchanging toasts with the patriarchs of the Shao and Su families, who laughed at some political anecdote. Beside him, Mu Yuro displayed a maternal smile that softened her elegant features as she conversed with Patriarch Su's wife about the palace gardens. But the true focus of attention, though no one dared admit it openly, was the young man beside them, Yun Renzu, the #1 physician of the illusory demon realm, a cultivator who had reached the legendary divine profound realm, and the consort of the little demon empress, Knowing that today would be the announcement of his marriage and having been practically dragged by his mother to dress decently for the first time in his life, Renzu looked particularly breathtaking. So breathtaking that even those with the firmest wills avoided gazing at him for too long, fearing it might be disrespectful, or simply too overwhelming. He sat with an almost supernatural calm, his back straight without any stiffness, his posture naturally imposing. His relaxed shoulders gracefully bore an immaculate white hanfu that seemed woven from threads of moonlight. Pure spiritual silk cascaded over his body like freshly fallen snow, molding perfectly to the contours of his slender yet unmistakably powerful frame. The wide sleeves opened elegantly, ending in soft purple cloud embroidery, as though brushed by a divine artist. A white sash, tied with millimeter precision at his waist, accentuated the elegant line of his silhouette. Not overly muscular, but firm, refined, carrying the strength of someone who could crush mountains if he wished. His long black hair fell straight down to the small of his back, smooth as freshly spilled ink. A few loose strands framed his face in an almost provocative manner, dancing lightly in the hall's breeze. Each strand seemed to drink in the surrounding light, returning it with a deep luster like polished obsidian. His skin was the pure white of fresh snow, so flawless and uniform it appeared carved from divine jade, without the slightest imperfection. His face was a celestial masterpiece, simply perfect. Arched eyebrows like swords about to be unsheathed, a straight and aristocratic nose, naturally full lips tinted with a subtle redness that contrasted against his pale complexion. But it was his eyes that stole the breath of anyone who dared meet them for too long. Black, profound, unfathomable, true bottomless wells that seemed to contain both the emptiness of the cosmos and the beauty of the most exquisite mortal jewel. A single glance was enough to make hearts falter, minds stumble, and souls question their own resolve. In the hall, men and women, regardless of status, age, or cultivation, shared only one thought. He was worthy of the title of the most beautiful man in the illusory demon realm. Battle-hardened patriarchs who had lived centuries looked away, suddenly insecure, as if their very sexuality had been silently tested and judged. Women, even the proudest, most influential, or most accustomed to power, felt an unexpected heat rise to their cheeks, fingers gripping goblets too tightly as a dangerous, almost forbidden thought flickered in their minds. To abandon everything, husbands, titles, duties, for just one moment, simply to lose themselves in that face which seemed to belong to an immortal who had chosen to walk among mortals. Unfortunately, the unbridgeable distance created by his untouchable demeanor, combined with the absolute power he wielded and the fact that he was the future husband of the little demon empress, rendered any fantasy they might harbor utterly impossible. All the more so because the little demon empress herself watched everything with ruthless attention, casting a death god glare at anyone who dared stare at her future husband for too long. Unwittingly, half the banquet had already passed. Yet the little demon empress remained seated upright on the emperor's throne the entire time, barely speaking. Nor did anyone dare inquire about the great matter to be announced. At a certain point, while the guests murmured among themselves, Yun Qinghong, now once again recognized as the leader of the 12 guardian families, set down his wine goblet, stood, and made a respectful bow. Taking the initiative, he raised his voice to break the silence hanging over the hall. Little demon empress, the disturbance involving Duke Huai has been resolved, and I still wish to express words I had no opportunity to say before. As your subordinate, I was of little use and relied entirely on the little demon empress's power to survive. For this I carry deep shame. Today, for gathering us all here, there must be a matter of great importance. Whatever the order, nothing will stop us from fulfilling it. Within the great hall, there was truly no one more suitable than Yun Qinghong to stand and speak. The moment he spoke, all others promptly moderated their voices and expressions. Setting down their wine goblets, they saluted together. Nothing will stop us from carrying out the little demon empress's orders. The little demon empress's gaze swept across the entire crowd, before finally settling in Renzu's direction. Everyone was bowing, yet only Renzu remained seated in his place, calmly sipping his tea. Not the slightest ripple showed on her face as she slowly rose and replied curtly. This empress indeed has a great matter to announce today. This matter concerns the future of our illusory demon realm. It also concerns the continuation of our demon emperor lineage. Continuation of the demon emperor lineage? Those words left everyone stunned. Could it be that the day had finally come? Under the evil ambition and conspiracy of Duke Huai's forces, this empress's real father and brother were killed one after another. Though this empress is a woman, this empress is still the last successor of the demon emperor lineage. If the demon emperor lineage were to end with this empress, chaos would surely follow in the illusory demon realm. Now that Duke Huai's forces have been completely eradicated, this empress has no choice but to consider the great matter of how to continue the demon emperor lineage. The little demon empress's words caused the crowd to exchange startled glances. Since only the little demon empress remained of the demon emperor lineage, a true continuation was fundamentally impossible. If one were to speak of continuing the lineage, it could only mean children born from the little demon empress herself. An elderly duke could no longer hold back and carefully asked, "Little demon empress, do you mean, perhaps you intend to accept a consort?" The little demon empress's eyes flashed with cold radiance before returning to their previous calm. She said coldly, "The little demon emperor was unable to leave an heir to continue our demon emperor lineage, so this can naturally only be done by this empress. This empress wore mourning gray for 100 years to grieve for my real father and brother. Now it is time for this empress to choose another husband." The moment the words "choose another husband" left her mouth, they left all the guardian families and duke palaces utterly stunned. They unconsciously looked toward Renzu, who sat calmly. The little demon empress remained standing, her deep crimson robe rippling slightly as silence enveloped the great demon hall. No sound dared echo beyond the restrained beating of hearts. Everyone awaited the inevitable confirmation they had been whispering about for months. Her eyes, sharp as blades of ice, swept the entire hall before finally resting on Renzu's tranquil figure. He lifted his gaze for a brief moment, unhurried, unpressured, as though he were in a place far quieter than that stifled tumult of expectations. When she spoke again, her voice was clear and authoritative, carrying the weight of 100 generations of sovereigns. In addition to continuing the demon emperor lineage, this empress must also ensure it remains pure. The lineage that carries the blood of the divine golden crow god cannot be tainted by inferior bloodlines. Several patriarchs swallowed hard. It was impossible to disagree. "Among all those present," she continued calmly, "there is only one man who possesses blood equal to ours. The young patriarch of the Yun family, Yun Renzu, bearer of the Golden Crow bloodline, as all of you know. His lineage is compatible with mine, and his strength, character, and reputation are acknowledged throughout the entire illusory demon realm." Some elders murmured in approval. Others were visibly relieved, for the little demon empress had merely summoned them to announce her long-rumored and long-discussed marriage. The little demon empress paused. Her perpetually stern expression softened for a fleeting instant, so brief that many believed they had imagined it. "Furthermore," she said, and her voice carried an almost imperceptible note of possessiveness, "everyone here already knows that this empress and Yun Renzu have been living closely together for months. He is already, in fact, my husband." No shock, no surprise, only the official confirmation of something everyone had watched unfold before their eyes. Patriarchs nodded slightly. Dukes raised their eyebrows, almost smiling, and the servants at the back of the hall exchanged knowing glances. It was exactly what they had expected to hear. This banquet was convened solely to formalize what is already reality. Today, before all the leaders of this realm, this empress officially announces our marriage. The little demon empress continued, then suddenly paused before proclaiming, "Duke Lang Su, hear me." A duke clad in blue stepped forward at once and bowed humbly. "This humble duke is here. Before night falls, announce to the entire demon imperial city. Send sound transmissions to every major city lord and regional lord, that in 7 days, young patriarch Yun of the Yun family shall join the demon emperor lineage and wed this empress in this demon imperial hall." The instant the little demon empress's words echoed through the great demon hall, sealing the royal wedding for 7 days hence, the entire atmosphere seemed to hold its breath. All eyes were fixed on her, awaiting something. Contrary reaction, a discreet objection, a gasp of shock, or at least a whisper of hesitation. But nothing came. No gaze shifted in doubt. No patriarch exchanged uneasy expressions. No duke raised his voice in protest. Indeed, the hall remained so silent that even the distant crackle of torch flames seemed too loud. The utter absence of resistance fell over the room like a declaration even more powerful than the announcement itself. "Since no one has any objection, then it is decided. Duke Lang Sun, you must remember to carry out what this empress has commanded." The little demon empress turned to Duke Lang Sun. "This humble duke has remembered everything." But Duke Lang Sun swallowed hard, gathered his courage, and said, "But to set the wedding in 7 days is simply too sudden. The honorable little demon empress is the monarch of the illusory demon realm, and even the will of the divine golden crow's soul. This kind of wedding should be celebrated throughout the world, should shake the heavens. Even if we used 7 days to prepare, it would not be Inu." This empress said 7 days. "Then it is 7 days." "Yes." Duke Lang Sun nodded quickly, his head drenched in cold sweat, no longer daring to speak. After taking 2 steps back, he hurried out. As he ran, he groaned inwardly. My God. Only 7 days. Even if the entire city used every effort to prepare, 7 days would barely be enough. And those big shots in the southern border and northern domains, after receiving the sound transmission, they'll probably shit themselves in fear and run here choking back tears. They might not even arrive in time. The little demon empress faced her subordinates. All of you may set aside whatever plans you have for the next 7 days to prepare for this empress's and Renzu's grand wedding ceremony. Even with only 7 days, you are not permitted to be careless or make any mistakes. It need not shake the world, but it must be grand enough. You must not work half-heartedly. It cannot be less grand than the one 100 years ago. Begin preparations immediately. You may all withdraw. This event was undoubtedly greater than the heavens, so having the various guardian families and duke palaces work together to prepare was not the least bit exaggerated. A 7-day deadline was simply far too rushed. Their retreating footsteps were all hurried, and once they left the demon imperial hall, they all flew away swiftly, terrified that their own preparations would fall short compared to others. The only person who did not leave the great hall was one of the two parties involved, a figure unmatched in the entire history of the illusory demon realm, Renzu. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right, cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 54. Chapter 54. No one dares oppose my wife. After everyone had left, only the little demon empress and Renzu remained in the demon imperial hall. Renzu rose calmly from where he had been seated. The white hanfu rippled like mist around his legs as he walked toward his future wife. The little demon empress stood beside the throne, arms crossed, her red mantle still swaying with the remnant of the abrupt motion from her final order. She raised an eyebrow as he approached. Husband, you really are impressive. I thought there might be some objection to our marriage. But it seems your plans are working out, since all the patriarchs and dukes seem eager to please you and didn't interfere with any of this empress's decisions. Renzu stopped one step away from her. His black eyes met her black eyes. As I told you. Renzu's voice was calm but firm, carrying the same kind of confidence that silenced even the proudest patriarchs in his presence. They don't oppose it because they understand what it would mean to do so. My power surpassed the sovereign profound realm long ago. I've reached the divine profound realm. None of them would dare stand against someone who could destroy their families in an instant. Even the proudest know the difference between courage and suicide. He paused briefly, his eyes remaining fixed on hers. Besides, you're the only other person on this continent whose strength is recognized as equal to mine. A faint mocking glint crossed his eyes as he continued. Even though you and I both know that's not true, since I'm far stronger. The little demon empress narrowed her eyes but didn't interrupt him. He took another step closer, close enough for the faint perfume of her red mantle to mingle with the cold breeze drifting through the hall. But knowing we're united as husband and wife only reinforces what everyone understood today. They have nowhere to run, no way to deal with me or you. If they try to cling to your thighs or mine, it'll be useless. We're on the same side now, practically a single entity ruling the illusory demon realm. He slowly raised his hand, lightly adjusting the collar that fell over her shoulder, as if the gesture were natural. They know this. That's why they dare not challenge either the empress or the man she chose. Renzu continued, his voice calm, almost monotonous, but laden with conviction. But it's not just strength. Over the past few weeks, I've built something they could never achieve, trust. I treated their wounded, cured diseases that even the most renowned physicians considered hopeless, restored hope to the common people, and gave the nobles reasons to respect me. In their eyes, I'm not just one of the strongest profound practitioners on this continent, but someone worthy of ruling by your side. A benevolent, balanced man, and... He paused briefly, the corner of his lips curling slightly. Dangerously reliable. The little demon empress stared at him in silence, and he continued, his tone lowering. Moreover, all the patriarchs and dukes owe me something. Whether it's a favor, a pill I refined, or helping open the profound entrances of their heirs. Each one has a personal debt to me. And in this world, debt is a chain stronger than loyalty. He gave a half-smile, meeting her gaze directly again. Renzu let out a light, almost amused sigh as he finished adjusting the sleeve of his white hanfu. I believe the biggest reason there were no objections isn't just my strength, but the fact that everyone, without exception, is trapped in this web I've quietly woven, thread by thread. If any of them had dared to raise an objection, even though the chance was nearly non-existent, there could always be an idiot. And if that idiot appeared, it would be the same as throwing himself into a sea of sharks. He gave a small, restrained smile, full of meaning. The other patriarchs and dukes would naturally side with me, not out of loyalty but convenience. After all, who would want to oppose someone who can heal, strengthen, or destroy with equal ease? The fool who stood up would be seen in a negative light, isolated, abandoned, and lose any political or social support he had. In the end, I wouldn't need to lift a finger. They would devour him themselves. The little demon empress snorted and spoke with a sigh. Your intellect is truly frightening, husband. You've practically created a near-perfect anti-traitor system. In the future, our descendants won't suffer what this empress has. He extended his hand, his long, pale fingers brushing her chin with a gentleness that contrasted with the strength that could crush mountains. I told you to trust things to me. I can be many things. His voice came low, almost a whisper that seemed to vibrate in the air between them. I can be manipulative, calculating, even despicable in the eyes of others. His deep, unwavering black eyes held hers with silent sincerity. But I will never let you down. The statement was made with absolute calm, without oaths or theatrical promises. It was simply a fact. As long as you're my woman, there's nothing I can't do to make you happy. Whether it's a mortal, a goddess, or a demon, each must be responsible for their own choices. And from the moment we were together in the Golden Crow ancestral land, I decided you would be my wife. Nothing will change that. If I like something, I cherish it. 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, no matter how many years pass. That will never change. The little demon empress held his gaze for a long second, her black eyes sparkling with that indomitable pride. A low snort escaped her lips, not of disdain but of stubborn resistance she knew was futile against him. With a swift motion, she raised her delicate hand and grasped his that was touching her perfect little face, pulling it toward her, pressing his pale palm against her doll-like perfect face, where the fair skin contrasted with the vivid red of her mantle. Her fingers intertwined with his, gripping with an intensity that betrayed the emotion she tried, futilely, to suppress. You, arrogant idiot, she murmured, laden with a tremor that didn't suit the empress who had just dismissed patriarchs like insects. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she turned her face slightly against his hand, as if seeking more of that touch, but then lifted her chin, eyes narrowed in a slit of pride. Do you think you can melt me with sweet words and empty promises? I am the little demon empress, not some weak maiden who bows to any man's vows. You dare speak of happiness as if I need it from you. Despite the cutting words, she didn't release his hand. On the contrary, she pressed it firmer against her cheek, her lips lightly brushing the base of his fingers in a gesture that was both possessive and vulnerable. A single, unwanted, traitorous tear escaped the corner of her eye, tracing a crystalline path down her immaculate skin before falling to the marble floor of the hall. Renzu sighed softly, a deep, almost indulgent sound, as if her pride was something he expected and, deep down, appreciated. With a slow motion, he pulled her closer, his arms enveloping the small, slender body of the little demon empress with a naturalness that felt ancient, as if the gesture were an extension of his will. The scent of jasmine and demonic flames from her mingled with the cold air of the hall, and the silence that followed seemed to freeze time. Stop being so proud with me. I know that's how you are, my dear empress, and it's not so easy to change. His voice was husky, low, close to her ear, each word sliding with the smoothness of a touch. But I am your most faithful confidant, someone who will be by your side for the rest of your life. The little demon empress remained still for a moment, her body rigid in his embrace. But the steady, firm warmth from Renzu's chest began to dissolve the tension. She let out a breath, almost imperceptibly, and responded only with a soft sound. Amen. The delicate sound was lost against his white hanfu, but Renzu heard it, and a faint smile crossed his lips. He lowered his face slightly, his chin resting on her head, and spoke in a calm tone, yet full of that natural authority no one dared challenge. Now that we're going to be officially husband and wife, you'll have to learn to be docile and obedient. Those words, if spoken by any other man, would be an affront worthy of execution. But coming from him, laden with a dangerous mix of tenderness and dominance, they sounded more like a promise than an order. For a moment silence stretched again, and then, almost reluctantly, the little demon empress responded in a low voice, muffled against his chest. Amen. Renzu let out a light laugh, the deep, pleasant sound echoing through the empty hall, as if satisfied with that simple surrender. His fingers slid through the long black strands of her hair, and he added, in an almost playful tone but full of restrained affection, Good girl. She pushed him lightly on the chest, her face flushed, but didn't meet his eyes, and Renzu just smiled, keeping her in his arms, as if the entire world could crumble and he still wouldn't let her escape. Renzu slowly tilted his face, his gaze fixed on her as if nothing else existed in the world. His fingers rose to the little demon empress's chin, lifting it gently. For a moment, she stared at him in silence, her black eyes sparkling, pride and vulnerability dancing within them like fire and ice refusing to blend. And then he kissed her. The first touch was light, almost chaste. Lips brushing lips, a whisper of warmth. But he leaned in further, deepening the kiss, his tongue brushing her lower lip, seeking entry. The little demon empress yielded obediently. Her lips parted in a trembling sigh, and his tongue slid inside, hot, firm, exploring with deliberate slowness that made every nerve in her body vibrate. She responded with a muffled moan, her tongue meeting his in a duel that started hesitant and soon became fierce, tongues intertwining, brushing, savoring. Her teeth lightly grazed his tongue, a touch of possessiveness, and Renzu responded with a low growl, his hand pulling her closer until their bodies pressed together, white hanfu against red mantle. His tongue traced hers in slow circles, then fast, then slow again, as if teaching her to dance to his rhythm. The little demon empress dug her nails into his sleeve, her fingers trembling, and matched his intensity, her tongue pushing against his, claiming space, savoring him like a poison she chose to drink. When they finally separated, it was with a wet, reluctant sound. A silver thread of saliva still connected them for a second, breaking when Renzu pulled his face back just enough to breathe against her lips. "See," he murmured teasingly. "Being docile isn't so hard." The little demon empress opened her eyes slowly, her lips swollen and red, her chest rising and falling in short breaths. A fierce blush colored her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "Amen," was all she said, a low, surrendered sound, almost a purr, while her fingers still clung to his white hanfu as if fearing he might vanish. Renzu smiled, a calm, dangerous smile, like that of someone who had just conquered an entire empire with a single kiss. Then, without ceremony, he sat on the imperial throne. The same throne where emperors had ruled for millennia, where she had been alone for 100 years, and pulled her onto his lap. With a fluid motion, she was settled on his thighs, facing him, her legs on either side of his waist, the red mantle cascading like a waterfall of blood around them. She gave him a cold look, or tried to, because the blush on her cheeks betrayed everything. "You're on my throne," she said, trying to sound authoritative. "And you put me on your lap. Like a child." Renzu tilted his head, his black hair falling like a curtain over her shoulder. "You're my wife," he replied simply. "And I'm your husband. The throne is ours." She opened her mouth to protest, but he kissed her again. Her small hands rose to his chest, gripping the white fabric tightly, as if fearing he might disappear. When they pulled apart, she was breathless. "You will kill me with embarrassment one day," she murmured against his lips. "Then die happy," he replied, and hugged her, tight, as if the entire world could wait. An hour later, the vast demon imperial hall rested in absolute silence, the kind that only exists after a storm. Renzu walked slowly down the main corridor of the palace toward the exit, his steps echoing rhythmically on the marble. The white hanfu, now slightly wrinkled, swayed around his legs with the natural elegance of someone who never lost composure. After bidding farewell to his future wife, he immediately headed to his home, telling her to come there later. The demon imperial city seemed far more agitated than usual. Crowds of people filled the streets, and shadows of figures crossed the sky, flying in haste. The news of the grand wedding 7 days later between the little demon empress and the young patriarch of the Yun family had once again set the recently calmed demon imperial city ablaze. The Yun family was the busiest because it was the young patriarch's wedding, and with the little demon empress, everyone in the Yun family was shocked by this surprising news, and everyone became frantically busy. From the grand elders of the Yun family to the lowest servants, they dropped everything they were doing. Everyone devoted all their time to preparing the young patriarch's wedding, and they were so madly busy they seemed like gyroscopes being whipped and spun. Young patriarch, little demon empress, just thinking about it was madly exciting. The day everyone had been waiting for had finally arrived. When Renzu returned home, as soon as he entered, he saw Yun Qinghong standing with his back to him. "Zuer, you're back," Yun Qinghong said as he turned. His expression was especially calm as he stood there, seemingly waiting specifically for him. "My mother, what was her reaction?" Renzu asked, pondering. He could imagine his mother was excited about all this, since she always discussed when the two of them would marry. He, Yun Qinghong smiled lightly and said, "Your mother just went to Duke Qing's palace to personally prepare the clothes and adornments you'll wear 7 days from now. Typical of her. To be honest, when I learned Sai would be my wife, I thought mother might be a bit angry." "Angry?" Yun Qinghong's face showed puzzlement. Why would she be furious? The woman you're marrying has an extraordinary identity, spectacular appearance, and exceptional profound strength in this illusory demon realm. As a mother, she didn't even have time to be happy. How could she be furious? If you think we'd care about the age difference, you're overthinking it. In the sovereign profound realm, a difference of 100 or 200 years is no different from 1 or 2 years. Besides, based on appearance alone, the little demon empress looks much younger than you. True. Renzu gave a wry smile, recalling that his future wife looked like a very young girl, despite her stunning beauty. Zuer. Yun Qinghong showed no emotion. He was incredibly calm. Tell your father. How much time does the little demon empress have left? Renzu's eyes remained calm. He had already resolved this problem. But besides the little demon empress and himself, no one knew about it. The little demon empress had basically asked him to keep it secret at the time when she didn't trust he would cure her. And afterward, they hadn't discussed it. Should he tell? If you promised the little demon empress to keep it secret, then say nothing. Yun Qinghong smiled lightly but sighed heavily in his heart. Father, why would you ask that? Renzu asked curiously. Yun Qinghong said in frustration. Because the little demon empress's strength has increased tremendously in these past few months. It increased so much that it was absolutely abnormal. I believe there was some side effect to it, right? A while ago, I suddenly remembered something your grandfather told me over 100 years ago. At that time, your mother and I weren't married yet. While giving me advice on cultivating the purple cloud art, he said the illusory demon realm was too calm, and being calm and stable for too long meant it was slowly tearing apart the loyalty and unity of the 12 families. Once they played their trump cards, they could still rule the world with one hand. It was just that the price they'd have to pay would be excruciatingly painful. I tried to ask more about it back then, but your grandfather didn't tell me in detail, because that was a secret he kept with the previous demon emperor for the emperor demon clan. Yun Qinghong looked deeply at Renzu. I believe this secret has to do with her sudden increase in strength. Renzu fell silent for a few seconds. His always tranquil eyes gained a more serious glint. Then, he let out a light sigh and walked to one of the hall's windows, gazing at the reddish horizon of the demon imperial city before responding. You're right, father. His voice was calm. She paid a price for that abnormal advancement. Sai's strength increased beyond her body's natural limit. To reach the half-step divine profound realm in such a short time, she burned part of her own life essence. Yun Qinghong frowned slightly, his serene tone gaining a shadow of concern. So it's true. She sacrificed part of her life. Renzu nodded. Originally, she would have had only 3 years left. The power of her golden crow flames, being a woman, began consuming her own vital energy. Yun Qinghong narrowed his eyes, his face assuming silent gravity. And you are telling me this now because... Renzu interrupted him with a small, confident, almost smug smile. Because I've already solved the problem, father. For a moment Yun Qinghong blinked, surprised. Solved? Renzu turned to him, crossing his arms, and said calmly, Father, sometimes you forget who the son you raised is. I'm not just the young patriarch of the Yun family, I'm the best physician in the illusory demon realm. In fact, I'm the best physician under the heavens. Solving such a problem was easy. Yun Qinghong let out a muffled laugh, half incredulous, half proud. You really have no shame boasting in front of your father? Do you, Zuer? It's not boasting, it's the truth. Renzu replied naturally, approaching again. What was killing Tsai wasn't something that could be cured by ordinary medicines or conventional medical arts. In fact, I had to refine a pill called the Sun and Moon pill that extended her life by several thousand years. The downside is that I used several rare herbs I was very lucky to find in the illusory demon realm. I doubt there's another set to make a pill like that. Yun Qinghong looked at him in silence for a few moments, his gaze oscillating between incredulity and pride. Sun and Moon pill? I've never heard of it. You didn't use your own life essence or anything like that to make it, did you? No. I could have done that, and it was my second option. I would have done it without hesitation. Renzu shrugged, as if it were a minor detail. She's my wife, and I promised I wouldn't let anyone take that from me. Not fate, not time, not the laws of the world. Besides, I don't intend to leave you without a grandchild or two to spoil. Fortunately, I didn't need to resort to that. For a moment Yun Qinghong was speechless. Then he let out a low, sincere laugh, full of satisfaction. Ha ha ha, truly Zuer, you are your father's pride. Your mother would be proud to know you're so determined when it comes to your wife. Renzu tilted his head with a light smile. Father, I just did what I thought was right. If she's going to be my wife, it's natural that I ensure she lives long enough to put up with me for a few millennia. Your daughter-in-law will live a long time, and soon you and mother will have grandchildren running around the courtyard. Maybe one with her eyes and another with my temperament. Adorable chaos. Yun Qinghong let out a deep, satisfied laugh before approaching and slapping Rinzu's shoulder hard. I'm proud, Zuer. You've changed a lot in the past year since meeting your master, studying by my side, and surpassing me in politics and administration. Though you don't have my blood, to me that means nothing. You are my son. He spoke smiling, his gaze laden with pride. Ha! Your grandfather would be thrilled if he could see how far the Yun clan has come. Marrying the little demon empress? He would have fainted from shock. For a moment, the silence that followed was comfortable. Well, I won't take up more of your time. I imagine you have your own plans before the big day. Yun Qinghong straightened his sleeves and looked toward the door. Your mother will go mad if I don't oversee the tailoring of the attire and the palace arrangements. I can already hear her saying that men know nothing about ceremonies. Rinzu let out a brief, sincere laugh. She's probably right. Probably, Yun Qinghong agreed good-humoredly. He paused at the door for a moment, turning to cast one last glance at his son. Zuer, just remember one thing. Power and wisdom sustain a ruler, but genuine affection is what makes a man whole. You already have the first two in excess. Don't lose the third. Rinzu looked at him in silence for a moment. His calm gaze softened slightly, and he responded in a low voice. Understood, father. Yun Qinghong smiled, satisfied. Good. With a final nod, the patriarch turned and left the cabin, the light sound of his footsteps fading into the distance. When the door closed, silence dominated the space once more. Rinzu remained still for a moment, his gaze lost in some distant point. Even after healing thousands of people and receiving countless demonstrations of gratitude, his heart remained unmoved. Unfortunately, he no longer had the disposition to nurture genuine affection for anything that didn't spark his interest, nor for people he didn't consider truly precious. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right. Cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 55. Chapter 55, Marriage. The news of the marriage between the little demon empress and the young patriarch of the Yun family, Rinzu, spread throughout the entire illusory demon realm in just a single day, carried by countless sound transmission talismans. Faced with such a momentous announcement, even the precious 1,000 and 10,000 kilometer talismans, normally used with the utmost care, became disposable items. Just as had happened when Rinzu's medical skills were first revealed to the world, the number of talismans consumed in that single day likely surpassed the total used over several years combined. Of course, alongside this heaven-shaking news came the revelation that Rinzu had been bestowed the pure Golden Crow bloodline, granted directly by the Golden Crow divine soul itself. The union of the couple had been ordained by that very bloodline and, above all, by the necessity of ensuring the continuation of the Demon Emperor bloodline, a decree issued by the Golden Crow divine soul personally. For those who had been unaware of this truth or who did not know all the details, confusion was inevitable. After all, this fact had only been disclosed on the day of Duke Huai's coronation, the same day he was slain by the little demon empress's own hands. Thus, the expected uproar, criticism, and skepticism never materialized. Throughout the illusory demon realm, only praise and exclamations of admiration could be heard. For the various rulers and overlords, however, the news was like setting fire to their backsides. What? 7? In 7 days? You're not mistaken, are you? Hurry. Hurry and send a sound transmission to confirm you didn't mishear. What? It really is in 7 days. Damn it. Lord Mayor, what are we going to do? What do you mean, what are we going to do? Prepare the highest grade profound arc and the highest grade profound crystals. 2 hours? No. We depart in 1 hour move. The little demon empress and the benevolent immortal sage. If I'm not there in time, I won't be able to show my face in the illusory demon realm ever again. But the matter of preparing the congratulatory gift. We have about the time it takes to fart to get ready. Rush to the treasury right now and bring out the highest grade treasures and medicines. Bring as much as you can carry. Go! The same scene unfolded in every corner of the illusory demon realm, occurring even more frantically in places far from the demon imperial city. As the news spread like wildfire, the entire realm practically boiled over, and rarely seen profound arcs streaked continuously across the skies. Even the stingiest of influential figures, who would normally spare no expense only in the direst circumstances, anxiously poured all their savings into energy crystals just to make their arcs fly a little faster. Inside Demon Imperial City itself, the clamor never ceased. day or night. The 12 guardian families and more than 100 duke palaces all raced about frantically, with almost no rest. Unknowingly, 7 days slipped away in silence. With each passing day, Demon Imperial City grew ever more lively. Even its appearance had changed dramatically. Lanterns, banners, and long red carpets adorned every corner, while the golden flames symbolizing the Golden Crow blazed brightly everywhere. Viewed from the distant heavens, the once somber Demon Imperial City now revealed itself as a dazzling golden sea. At last, the day had arrived. It was the grand wedding day of the little Demon Empress, and even before sunrise, the city already pulsed with extraordinary vitality. Countless soldiers of the Demon Imperial Army, clad in golden and crimson armor, stood guard in every nook and cranny. In the skies flew rarely seen profound beasts, legendary creatures, each mounted by a profound practitioner whose aura was exceptionally powerful. Any suspicious movement within the city would be instantly detected. Along the vast red carpets that crisscrossed the city, young women in colorful dresses held delicate floral arrangements. They stood perfectly aligned and motionless while the wind gently swayed the hems of their gowns. The scene was so beautiful it resembled a living painting. Though several hours still remained before the ceremony began, the nobles and hegemons who had come to offer congratulations were already gathering before the Demon Imperial Hall. The memory of the wedding held 100 years ago, between the little Demon Emperor and the little Demon Empress, remained vivid in their minds. Now, a century later, by the twists of fate, the little Demon Empress, sustained by her unmatched strength, ruled the entire illusory demon realm alone. No one dared challenge her. The 12 guardian families and all the ducal palaces served her with absolute, unquestionable loyalty. The Demon Emperor bloodline, which many had believed extinguished, had been preserved through the grace and divine power of the Golden Crow God. Everyone could feel that this grand wedding would mark a new chapter in the history of the illusory demon realm. Although Renzu had never married in his previous life, he had a basic understanding of how wedding ceremonies worked in his old world. Here, however, everything was different. The traditions of the illusory demon realm were unique, especially for an imperial wedding. And this time, he was marrying into the imperial family itself. Even so, Renzu felt no nervousness. Over the past few days, while the entire city buzzed with ceaseless preparations and celebrations, he alone had spent the period in relaxed, almost leisurely fashion. On the night before the wedding, Renzu left the Yun family and headed to the Demon Imperial Palace. There, he spent the night in a chamber specially prepared for him, for according to tradition, he was not allowed to remain with his future bride before the ceremony. Throughout the night, 8 beautiful women were assigned to attend to him, ready to fulfill any need that might arise. When the sun had only just begun to rise on the horizon, it was they who gently woke him and began the preparations for the great day. "Your Highness Lord Demon, please allow this servant to assist you in rising and dressing." After marrying the little Demon Empress, Renzu's title would change from Young Patriarch Yun to Lord Demon. Thus, it was no surprise that the maids had already begun addressing him as such. These 8 maids had been personally selected by the little Demon Empress herself, and every one of them was exceptionally beautiful. Their appearance far surpassed that of any young lady from a prominent family, and their profound strength was at least at the tyrant profound realm. All wore white veils, and as they moved, their fragrance drifted through the air while their jade-like bodies could be faintly glimpsed. Far more seductive than if they had been completely bare. They helped Renzu out of bed, put on his inner robe and boots, and supported him all the way to the bathing pool. The pool was large, and the area was filled with mist. Whether the surroundings or the floor, everything was crafted from heavenly lake divine jade. The milky whiteness of the jade was truly breathtaking. Renzu removed his outer robe and slowly entered the pool. The 8 beautiful maids removed their veils simultaneously, revealing slender figures, skin as fair as fresh snow, and curves that seemed sculpted by divine hands. 4 of them stepped forward to scatter colorful petals across the warm water, while the other 4 approached Renzu, surrounding him with grace and reverence. Their cool, jade-like hands touched his skin, washing him with delicate, almost devotional movements. Even though it was their first time seeing a man's body, their crystal-clear eyes showed no fear, shyness, or disgust. On the contrary, they were utterly captivated, completely enchanted. After all, there was a reason Renzu was called the most beautiful man in the entire primal chaos. His appearance transcended any attempt at description. It was a kind of beauty that made hearts falter and breaths catch. His face was so perfectly harmonious that even light itself seemed to hesitate before touching it, as if afraid it were unworthy. In truth, if Renzu were not the future husband of the little Demon Empress, whom they served with absolute loyalty, and if he did not possess profound strength that commanded respect on its own, it was quite likely those 8 women would have already pushed him into the pool and taken the initiative without a second thought. Moreover, all of this was also connected to his own beauty. a curious realization Renzu had made over the past few months. His appearance had reached such an extraordinary level that even men might, for a moment, question their own orientation. Something words simply could not express. It was as though he had returned to his purest origins, bearing an ancient simplicity and unblemished purity. Anyone who saw him for the first time was overcome by a mystical, indescribable sensation. As if the moment he appeared, the entire world was compelled to behold him in silence, unable to harbor any profane thought. He was natural, one step removed from the very essence of nature itself. Untouched, incorruptible, as though eternally immune to the stains and impurities of the mortal world. And that was precisely the key. Though his beauty was overwhelming, it brought him no trouble. Not only because of his crushing power, but also because most people simply did not dare even attempt to sully his immortal figure. But that was only the surface-level observation. His perfect appearance stemmed from the banished immortal aura, which did not actually alter his body but changed how others perceived him. It was not overt magic nor an ability that directly manipulated emotions, rather, it was a spiritual field that heightened the visual and emotional sensitivity of those around him. When someone looked at him, their brain registered every detail with clarity and harmony far beyond normal, as if all aesthetic qualities were amplified in a single instant. Proof of this lay in the fact that his features had not changed when he fused with the aura, only refined countless times to a level impossible to describe with words. This effect awakened ancient human instincts tied to the pursuit of rarity, beauty, and potential superiority. That was why even heterosexual men might, for a brief moment, question their own sexuality. It was not genuine desire but an intense reaction to encountering something the brain could not immediately categorize. The impact was strongest on first contact, gradually diminishing as the mind adjusted. Rationality eventually replaced the initial shock, reorganizing perception and reducing everything to something more bearable. This explained why many forgot or suppressed the inconsistent sensations they felt at first. The aura did not create lasting emotions, only spontaneous, momentary reactions, like seeing a work of art so stunning it seems to transcend the ordinary for a few seconds. Thus, his perfection became both irresistible and ephemeral, a beauty that disarmed in the first instant, yet which the human mind was forced to assimilate lest it succumb. That was why sometimes everyone became entranced upon seeing him, while at other times his breathtaking beauty simply went unnoticed. After understanding the phenomenon, Renzu had nearly nicknamed his own appearance bipolar banished immortal. Given how unpredictably people reacted, in the end, regardless of how others responded, he remained the most handsome man in the entire primal chaos. Another thing Renzu discovered while studying the banished immortal aura was that it possessed something akin to what many would call charm, a capacity that could further amplify his appearance. However, he still did not fully understand its purpose, having only conducted superficial tests on the little demon empress, and she had nearly torn his clothes off on the spot. To be honest, it frightened him a little. The feeling was that this charm did not merely enchant people, it turned them into slaves to their own desire for him, something so intense it surpassed all reasonable limits. He decided he would only use it fairly and honorably in the future. When Renzu finished his bath, the sun had fully risen. The maids led him to dress, adorning him in luxurious golden robes, adjusting every fold with extreme care. Then they fastened a golden jade belt around his waist and, finally, placed an equally golden crown upon his head. The entire ensemble, supremely elegant, further accentuated the natural prestige that radiated from his body. His perfect appearance caused all the young women present to gaze at him with affection, some with veiled admiration, others unable to hide the sparkle in their eyes. Meanwhile, before the Demon Imperial Hall, the guests had begun to enter. The names announced by the Master of Ceremonies grew ever more impressive, one after another. In no time, the gifts brought by the visitors had piled up like a small mountain, each item a rare treasure that an ordinary person would never see in their lifetime. Yet the gifts intended for the Yun family seemed even more numerous. This was because the Yun family itself had made public that their young patriarch had a habit of collecting all manner of medicinal herbs, even rare plant seeds unseen in this world, something easily deduced, given that he was the #1 physician in the entire illusory demon realm. As a result, over the past 7 days, virtually every high-tier power in the realm had frantically sought out herbs at any cost. Medical sects and even Duke Baoqing Palace had not hesitated to offer their finest and most precious herbs, items they rarely ever displayed. More and more extremely rare medicinal herbs began to pile up, and the natural medicinal fragrance they released made even the experts present tremble. Each scent carried a pure, dense spiritual trace, revealing the extraordinary quality of the gathered herbs. The little demon empress appeared before Renzu, and her arrival instantly silenced the previously bustling Demon Imperial Hall. Yet this time, it was not her domineering aura that silenced them, but a beauty that should not exist in the mortal realm. She had used her gray robes to conceal her radiance and her cold demeanor to lock away her emotions. And not just for a few days, but for the past 100 years. Even the elder seniors had forgotten the original charm of Princess Tsai. Today, the little demon empress had cast aside the gray robes she had worn for a century and donned an extremely elegant golden dress. The hem trailed along the ground. The dress cinched her waist, revealing her slender figure. Her snow-white face bore light makeup, her lips painted red. Her watery, star-like eyes remained cold. Yet the domineering air and expressionless mask everyone had thought eternally unbreakable had now vanished. No one would doubt that if those eyes were to flirt, all living beings would be mesmerized, and nothing else in the world would seem attractive. The silence within the hall lasted a long time, as everyone's souls endured the greatest shock they would ever experience in their lives. They felt as though they were no longer in the mortal world and had already ascended to the immortal realm spoken of only in legends. Because such a beauty should not exist in the mortal realm. She should belong only to a pure, immaculate, immortal fairy. She possessed beauty beyond words, the most prestigious status and bloodline no man in this world could obtain, and the ability and strength to make the entire population of the illusory demon realm bow before her. It was as though the creator of the world had bestowed upon her every finest gift. Gradually, everyone began to feel that the ceremony this night was becoming ever more mystical. Because in their hearts, the same thought resounded within them all. These two were truly worthy of each other. The time had come, the wedding began. Though today Renzu was marrying into the demon imperial family, in terms of procedure, he was still the lead. Celebrating the marriage in this way had been the little demon empress's own wish and decision, a way to declare to everyone, especially to Renzu himself, the place he held in her heart. Whether in scale, ceremony, or excitement, this wedding far surpassed the one held when the little demon emperor married the little demon empress. For the entire day, Demon Imperial City became a raging ocean of celebration, calming only slightly when night finally fell. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right, cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 56. Chapter 56, Wedding Night. Demon Emperor's Imperial Palace. The candlelight flickered, the red bed curtains swayed gently, and she wore a phoenix crown and ceremonial robes. A crescent moon emerged from behind the clouds, yet the sky remained faintly illuminated. Dim light filtered through the narrow slits of the bamboo windows, casting its glow upon the person seated on the bed. The little demon empress had been sitting silently on the soft bed for some time already. Although, just like 100 years ago, this was her grand night, her feelings now were entirely different. Back then, her heart had been as calm as still water. Her marriage to the little demon emperor had been her fate as a woman of the demon emperor bloodline, or perhaps it could be said to have been her mission. Tonight, however, her heart was pounding fiercely, and she could not calm herself. 100 years ago, on her wedding night, her waiting had not been rewarded with the arrival of the little demon emperor. Instead, she received news that he had gone to the distant profound sky continent. And soon after, word came that he had perished there, completely altering her destiny. Yet tonight, such a tragedy would not occur. This was also a new beginning for her life. Because 100 years ago, her marriage had been for the sake of her clan. Today, however, it was partly for her clan and partly for herself. She thought back to how everything had begun, and how utterly anticlimactic it had been. There had been no grand encounter, no sublime destiny. They had seen each other naked, literally, in a secluded lake, bathed in the same waters she had used for years to suppress the golden crow's flames. Out of pride, instinct, and duty, she had tried to kill him before even learning his name. He defeated her without wounding her, without humiliating her. He merely showed how absolute the gap between them truly was. He sealed her power as easily as one closes a fist, yet he did not touch a single strand of her hair with ill intent. The hatred that should have been born there never appeared. She spent an entire week by his side, unable to use her powers but free to observe. During that time, he treated her with a gentleness she had never known, caring for her simply and directly, demanding nothing in return. And for the first time in 100 years, she truly rested. When the enemies who had killed her father and brother came for her, she was already prepared to die standing. He did not allow it. He protected her, helped her reach the Golden Crow's ancestral land, and because of that, she obtained the power needed to exact revenge on those traitors. All of it had only been possible because he had stood beside her. The door opened gently, and Renzu stepped in slowly. "Wife, He called softly and said, "It is now official. We are truly husband and wife." Amen. The little demon empress nodded, feeling her heart nearly leap into her throat. After all, her husband was simply breathtaking. Dressed in ceremonial robes, he looked even more beautiful, impossible to look away from. His face was a masterpiece that would make any artist destroy their own brushes after seeing it, knowing they could never come close. Every feature seemed carved with cruel, almost inhuman precision. The symmetry was so absolute that the human eye struggled to process it, refusing to believe it was real. He did not merely have a beautiful face, he had a perfect one. The standard, the reference, everything that came after would, by comparison, be an imperfect blur. The cruelest part was his dark eyes, which held a glow so deep it seemed to contain its own cosmos, as though thousands of constellations had been suffocated within them. They were not merely beautiful, they were dangerous. To look into them was to feel oneself seen to the very core, measured, understood, and yet still yearning to remain there, even knowing one might become lost. They were eyes that carried ages, eyes that could make a king kneel or an assassin hesitate. His long eyelashes cast elegant shadows over that gaze, a perfection so refined it was almost offensive. His hair was another crime against logic, long, impeccably silky, with jet-black strands cascading down his back with the fluidity of the purest water, like living silk, like threads woven by the night itself. It was an absolute black, profound yet not lifeless. There was a silent luster to it, a breathing quality, as though each strand carried a fragment of power. Beneath the candlelight, the black grew more complex, revealing shades ordinary eyes could never perceive. Subtle golden reflections like stardust and dark crimson glimmers like embers on the verge of awakening. He wore luxurious robes in shades of gold, the fabric shimmered softly under the light as if woven from threads of sunlight. Every fold had been adjusted with extreme care, draping flawlessly over his body. At his waist was a golden jade belt whose polished surface reflected a discreet yet imposing gleam. Finally, atop his head rested an equally golden crown, intricately crafted with fine details that evoked authority and antiquity, all of it highlighting skin of an impossible tone. Not pale, not tanned, but pure, as though natural light itself bent correctly around him. There were no visible pores, no imperfections, no marks. It was as if an ideal body had been crafted from the very concept of absolute beauty and then bathed in light. Even the touch, for those who had touched him, was described as unnaturally smooth, as though human skin had never been so perfect. It was no wonder that on their wedding day, everyone had seemed utterly hypnotized by her husband. She had only managed to hold the spotlight for a brief moment before he appeared. The instant Renzu stepped into the ceremony, the entire atmosphere shifted. Even the most loyal servant assigned to conduct the wedding rites had seemed momentarily enchanted by him, as though he had fallen in love at first sight. Renzu took a few steps forward, pulling the little demon empress from her reverie. He gazed at her in silence. The woman before him looked like a mystical fairy, so beautiful that for a moment she left him breathless. The words he had intended to say scattered in his throat, swallowed before they could even form. Subconsciously, he felt that if he spoke, this ethereal, dreamlike scene might shatter like thin glass. "You are beautiful," he finally said, his voice low, soft, yet firm. The little demon empress turned her face away for a brief instant. A gentle warmth rose from her neck to her cheeks, lightly tinting her porcelain skin. "Naturally," she replied, trying to reclaim the dignified, indestructible tone of an empress, even though her heart was racing in a rhythm unworthy of her posture. "I am the empress. Being beautiful is no surprise." It was a subtle huff, almost a sigh. She looked at him for another second, her dark eyes reflecting the candles. "And you," she said softly, "are worthy." Renzu smiled faintly and said nothing more. He walked straight to the little demon empress's side, gently lifted his hands to remove the pearl-studded golden phoenix crown she wore, fully revealing her beautiful jade-white face. He raised a hand and touched her chin, sliding his fingers gently, as if confirming she was real, that all of this was real. The moment he did so, he sat beside her, one hand encircling her slender waist while the other tenderly caressed her face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. With a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the power he possessed, Renzu leaned over her, guiding her softly until the little demon empress's back touched the soft mattress of the ceremonial bed. Their eyes remained locked, black abysses meeting without fear or retreat. Renzu took in every detail of that perfect face, the long eyelashes trembling slightly with each gentle blink, the cheeks still enhanced by a thin layer of makeup that caught the light like dew on lotus petals, and those lips painted a deep, inviting red like the golden crow flames she commanded. He did not hesitate. Leaning closer, he captured those sweet lips with his own, beginning a deep kiss. A dance of tongues that started shy and exploratory but quickly grew fierce, charged with passion long restrained. His arms embraced her tightly, one around her slim waist, pulling her against his broad chest, while the other became lost in the silky strands of her hair. The kiss deepened, their tongues intertwined, savoring each other's warmth, the faint taste of ceremonial herbs and something more primal that belonged only to them. For the first time in a life filled with duty and vengeance, the little demon empress allowed herself to surrender. Her arms rose, wrapping around his neck, nails lightly digging into his nape as if anchoring herself to reality, while a low moan escaped her throat, muffled by the kiss. Renzu felt her body instinctively arch against his, the fabric of their robes whispering like silk. He deepened the kiss further, his tongue tracing hers with gentle possessiveness, as if marking what was now his by right and mutual desire. Her heart beat wildly against his chest. He pulled back only enough to breathe, lips still brushing hers, half-lidded eyes blazing with a fire that rivaled the palace flames. "My empress," he murmured against her mouth, voice husky with emotion and desire. "You are mine, and I am yours. Forever." She blinked slowly, eyes shimmering with a vulnerability only he could see, before pulling him back into another kiss. More urgent, more ravenous. Renzu's hands slid along the sides of her ceremonial robe, untying each knot with the same patient calm that always made her shiver. With every loosened tie, flawless skin emerged beneath, white as jade and warm as the flames she ruled. That alone was enough to make Renzu quicken his movements instinctively. He kissed her again with renewed intensity, lips brushing her cheeks, mouth, and neck with fervor. His hands explored the small, delicate body of his wife with the reverence of someone touching a sacred treasure. Wait. A soft moan escaped the little demon empress before she could stop it. A single sound that could shake even a saint's heart. Renzu felt his blood boil the instant he heard her trembling voice, while she herself seemed unable to believe she had let something so suggestive slip out. Her small hand flew up hastily, pressing against his lips as if to keep the entire world from hearing what she had just done. She pushed him gently, her face flushed to the point of glowing. All of her imperial composure, all the icy demeanor that defined the supreme ruler, had vanished completely. Looking away, she took a deep breath, trying to regain some control, before murmuring in a still unsteady voice, "Husband, I never asked this before, but your medical skills are so exceptional. Is there any way for me to conceive a child sooner?" Renzu's heart trembled slightly, yet soon after, the burning gleam returned to his eyes. He gazed at this little demon empress, the same one who always surprised him, challenged him, and disarmed him with gestures and words she herself did not realize. She was so adorable sometimes. Something like that, of course, must follow the laws of nature. He answered with a calm smile full of intent. Why would there be secret methods for it? The only way, he leaned closer, voice deep and warm, is for us to work diligently every day as husband and wife. His words fell like embers onto oil. The little demon empress's already red face became a true inferno. She tried to maintain her imperial composure, but her lips trembled, betraying her completely. Every day. The words came out as a thread, barely audible, laced with a mix of shame and something deeper. Indeed, this was a desire she had harbored for a long time. Had it not been for the countless responsibilities weighing on them both, they probably would have tried much earlier. Even so, despite their chaotic routine, they rarely failed to meet. 4 or 5 nights a week without fail. They lost themselves in each other until dawn. Long, intense nights that would exhaust any mortal couple. Renzu did not answer with words. He merely smiled and slid the hand resting on her waist a little lower, until it settled on the soft curve of her hip. Every day, he repeated huskily, lips brushing her ear. Morning, noon, night, until you bear our pair of heirs. She shuddered completely, a tremor that began at her lips and rippled down like a wave to her toes. You, shameless! She tried to scold him, but her voice broke midway, turning into a muffled moan when he lightly nipped her earlobe. Renzu pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. The phoenix crown already lay forgotten on the floor. The ceremonial gown, half unfastened, hung from her shoulders like a promise about to be fulfilled. You want an heir, my empress? His voice was low, almost a purr. Then let me work diligently, right now. Without waiting for a reply, he pulled her back to him, kissing her with a hunger that was no longer restrained. His hands slid over her shoulders, pushing the remaining golden fabric downward until it fell like a cascade of light around her slender waist. Her bare skin was finally revealed in its entirety beneath the flickering candlelight. Silence followed. Only the sound of ragged breaths, muffled moans, and the crackling of candles bore witness to how diligently the new demon lord worked to ensure the continuation of the demon emperor's bloodline. Many times, many times, Until dawn. /n. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right. Cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 57. Chapter 57 Preparations for the Journey to the Profound Sky Continent. The wedding ceremony had come to an end. Yet the fervor of the illusory demon Imperial City continued unabated for 7 full days. Following the marriage between Renzu and the little demon empress, an unprecedented demon lord seemed to have risen within the illusory demon realm. At first, when the news spread, many inhabitants believed the union existed solely to secure the continuation of the Golden Crow bloodline. However, everyone who witnessed the ceremony quickly realized that the truth went far beyond that. Over the following 7 days, the entire realm could see with their own eyes that it was not merely politics, lineage, or duty. Ever since becoming Renzu's wife, the little demon empress never wore gray again. Her radiance was so dazzling that few dared to look directly at her. Yet the most striking change was not her outward appearance, but the transformation in her aura and temperament. She remained as dignified, majestic, and cold as ever. Yet that colossal, oppressive, and icy presence which had made everyone tremble before her for a full century had vanished. Especially when she stood beside Renzu. A gentle, surprisingly warm splendor now shone in her eyes that had not wavered once in 100 years. It was as though, thanks to Renzu's existence, the world that had been completely gray to her had finally regained its colors. Later, people heard that on the wedding day itself, the little demon empress had followed Renzu to the Yun family household and performed the full kowtow of a daughter-in-law before Yun Qinghong and Mu Yuro. She had even addressed them as father and mother, leaving the couple so stunned they were at a loss for words. Afterward, she accompanied Renzu to pay respects to Yun Songhai and the Yun family ancestors, and then to the ancestors of the demon emperor lineage. Perhaps it was not merely for the sake of continuing the bloodline, but genuine affection. That was the thought of everyone who had never had much contact with either the little demon empress or Renzu. It was not, however, the opinion of the guardian families or the patriarchs who, long before the wedding, had already seen the two of them behaving exactly like husband and wife. In any case, Renzu and the little demon empress cared not one bit about what others thought. Moreover, although it was Renzu who had married into the demon emperor clan and any child they had would bear the surname Huan, in terms of bloodline, that child would still be a direct descendant of the Yun family. This meant that, from this moment onward, even though the little demon empress remained the sovereign of the illusory demon realm by imperial lineage, the realm itself had invisibly yet undeniably become essentially the domain of the Yun clan. After all, even though the Yun family was still officially only one of the 12 guardian families tasked with protecting the demon emperor clan, its standing in everyone's eyes was no longer the same. After 7 days of celebration, the ceremony finally concluded in a dignified and majestic fashion. The following morning dawned serene, one of those rare moments when the entire illusory demon realm seemed to breathe in unison. Soft light filtered through the clouds, not in fierce gusts, but in a warm, almost festive glow. It was as though even the sky itself, exhausted after a century of tension and oppression, had decided to rest for a while. The imperial city was finally quiet, not silent, merely tranquil, content, like someone exhausted after laughing for days on end. Golden banners still hung from balconies. Petals continued to adorn streets and terraces, and the sweet trace of incense and spices from the festivities lingered in the air. Yet the bustle was no longer frantic, it was harmonious, almost light. Far from all the euphoria, in another corner of the vast realm, a different quiet reigned. The Yun family residence. The main pavilion, spacious, refined, and filled with the fragrance of medicinal herbs, was the heart of the residence. There, Renzu sat. The low black wood table softly reflected the morning light. Upon it rested a small white porcelain teapot, hand-painted with golden strokes resembling the flight of a phoenix. Steam rose in delicate spirals, perfuming the air with a fresh, natural, almost ethereal scent. Renzu held the cup between his fingers, unhurried, posture impeccable, tranquil as though he were part of the pavilion itself. His calm seemed to reorder the very air around him, making everything more stable, as if the entire place had been bathed in his immortal aura. The near-absolute serenity of the moment was interrupted by the timely arrival of yet another elder, tasked with bringing him the complete list of wedding gifts offered to the couple. That was why he was there, handling ceremonial duties instead of simply enjoying his wife's company after everything they had been through so much. After a brief bow, the elder began his summary. Young patriarch, as a result of the young patriarch's marriage, we have received many valuable items. Most are medicinal herb seeds, or rare medicinal herbs. In total, there are more than 10,000 different sets. In addition, many guests presented swords, approximately 500 in all. Among them are 220 profound emperor swords and 737 top-grade profound sky swords. There are also some swords which, although lacking in profound rank, were forged from rare crystals and possess value equivalent to that of several cities. Furthermore, the elder paused for a second, nervously clearing his throat before continuing with difficulty. Furthermore, there are 7 tyrant profound swords. 7 swords. Renzu slightly raised his brows, unable to conceal the surprise that flashed through his chest. So he had received things like these? Even though he had little personal interest in them, after all, he possessed the boundless sword sheath, which contained blades far more powerful than any other. Those were still gifts of inestimable value. 7 swords. If they were ordinary, they would be nothing more than elegant curiosities. But 7 tyrant profound swords were enough to make even the strongest experts of the illusory demon realm turn pale. Emperor profound artifacts were already exceedingly rare. Tyrant profound artifacts, then, were legendary treasures. On average, only one new artifact of that level appeared in the entire realm every 100 years. If one gathered all existing tyrant profound swords, there would probably be little more than a dozen. And now, astonishingly, 7 of them had been sent as wedding gifts to the Yun family. The shock did not end there. There was also an absurd quantity of emperor profound swords. For most cultivators, obtaining even a single sword of that level would be an extravagant lifelong dream. And yet here he was, receiving 7 tyrant profound and more than 200 emperor profound swords as if they were mere trinkets. This was the benefit of power and prestige. Had he not married the little demon empress, he would still merely be the young patriarch of the Yun family. Even so, thanks to his medical skills, obtaining one or another emperor profound sword would not have been impossible. Difficult, yes, but achievable, as he had already proven by acquiring a few over the past months. But if he desired a tyrant profound sword, that was an entirely different matter. It would require constant effort, time, luck, and extremely rare opportunities. Possible? Yes. But it would take years, perhaps many, especially since few would be willing to part with such a treasure. To persuade someone, he would have to offer something more valuable than opening 10 profound entrances 10 times over in their body, a price so absurd that any cultivator would be moved enough to hand over even their own wife for a night, let alone a mere tyrant profound artifact. Thinking Renzu showed little interest in the blades, the elder began taking them out one by one from his spatial ring and displaying them. This tyrant profound sword is named Starbreaker. It is the personal gift of the Su family patriarch, sent to congratulate the young patriarch on his marriage and to express gratitude for saving the life of the old patriarch Su. This sword is named 19 Rakshasa Beheadings. It comes from the Tremor sect of the Rakshasa sect. The entire blade weighs 95,000 kilograms and is regarded as the most domineering sword in the entire illusory demon realm. Rumor has it that, in the last 900 years, not a single person has managed to fully control it. They hope the young patriarch will whisper sweet words into the little demon empress's ear tonight, so that their crime of defecting to the Duke Palace may be forgiven. This sword is named Scarlet Cloud Piercer. In the year it appeared, countless profound practitioners fought over it, triggering a true storm of blood. Each of these tyrant profound artifacts was exceptionally famous throughout the illusory demon realm, and these 7 swords were naturally no exception. Since no sovereign profound artifact had ever appeared in the realm, tyrant profound swords reigned supreme. True rulers among blades, the ultimate dream of any sword practitioner. Now all 7 lay before Renzu, and the combined aura of the blades was so majestic and oppressive that any ordinary profound practitioner would feel their legs weaken and their breath catch in their chest. Yet he remained unbothered. He merely raised a hand and stopped the elder from continuing to draw the swords. The elder sighed emotionally and said, "These swords are anything but ordinary, especially the 7 tyrant profound blades. Every former master of such swords possesses a reputation that pierces the heavens. It would be impossible, even in one's wildest dreams, to imagine a time when all these swords could be seen together. Young patriarch, do you truly wish to carry all of them with you?" He had never seen Renzu practice the sword and was utterly baffled as to why Renzu would carry so many blades on his person instead of storing them in the sword pavilion. "Yes, give them all to me," Renzu replied with a nod. The elder bowed his head in respect, though his eyes still held a trace of disbelief. Kneeling partially, not out of obligation but instinct, he presented the ring on his open palm, extending it toward Renzu with the reverence one would offer an imperial crown. "Young patriarch," he said in a low, careful voice still slightly hoarse with excitement, "I have already organized every gift received over these 7 days. All the Emperor Profound Swords, the top-grade Profound Sky Swords, the medicinal herbs, the rare seeds, the various artifacts, and of course, The 7 tyrant profound swords. Renzu lifted his gaze slightly, a calm glint passing through his eyes. The elder hurried on, as though afraid of not being clear enough. I also took the liberty of separating everything into different compartments within the spatial ring. Each section is organized by the nature of the items. Swords grouped by rank and origin, herbs cataloged by age and rarity, and the unique artifacts stored with utmost care to prevent any energy interference. There was pride in his tone, timid but genuine. Organizing a treasure trove that alone was worth more than the accumulated wealth of half the realm was something he would probably boast about to the next 3 generations. Renzu accepted the ring calmly, without excessive ceremony. His fingers brushed the dark metal, and a faint ripple of profound energy coursed through the ring before vanishing, acknowledging its new master. "Well done," he said simply. To the elder, those 2 words were worth more than any sword, seal, or title. His previously tense face relaxed instantly, his shoulders lightened, he almost looked younger. It is an honor to serve, young patriarch," he replied, bowing once more. He hesitated for a moment as if he still had something to add, but Renzu had already returned his gaze to his teacup, a silent, polite gesture indicating the elder's duties were concluded. With discretion, the elder rose, took a few steps back, and left the pavilion. Left alone, Renzu let out a soft sigh and vanished like a ghost. Since he had married into the Demon Emperor clan, he naturally had to begin living in the Demon Imperial Palace. Nevertheless, he returned to the Yun family residence every day to see his parents or refine pills that interested him. He felt more at ease doing so in his old hut, but he never stayed long. That was because he had to hurry back to the little demon empress to make a child. Yes, during this period he spent 2 hours refining pills, 4 hours sleeping, 4 hours cultivating, and the rest of his time was simply spent with the little demon empress in bed. And in some rather unusual other places. Though they were newlyweds and ought to show a little more restraint, Renzu simply could not help himself. He wanted to fuck his wife practically all the time. Renzu reappeared in the Demon Imperial Palace without so much as stirring a breeze. His figure materialized in the inner courtyard, where silence reigned deep and the air carried the gentle fragrance of spiritual flowers that bloomed only there, silver petals light as snow that sighed faint light when touched by the wind. He walked slowly, footsteps silent on the flawless polished floorboards. He passed beneath a row of suspended spherical lanterns whose inner flames burned golden, like miniature suns trapped in glass. Then, unhurried, he crossed one of the open passages leading to the private garden he had built over the past months. The place was an ocean of calm. No sound of soldiers, no echo of hurried servants. Only the subtle murmur of water running along a crystal stream that wound around smooth garden stones. The sky above was a deep, clear blue, and the sun rested upon it with gentle warmth. The spiritual grass glowed pure emerald, cool to the touch, perpetually dewed even at noon. Renzu climbed the 3 lightwood steps and sat on the veranda overlooking the garden. The veranda lay beneath a high eave decorated with golden patterns of crows and crescent moons, though the designs now seemed almost ornamental beside his presence. Soft shadow fell across his face, highlighting the flawless serenity of his features. He crossed his legs naturally, one arm resting lazily on his knee. The breeze played with a few strands of his hair, making them slide in dark waves over his shoulders. Light filtering through the leaves of the spiritual trees struck him in delicate bands, alternating brightness and shade, as though the world were painting Renzu slowly, with infinite patience. The contrast between the silent garden and his beauty felt almost unreal. It resembled an ancient painting, a young immortal resting after having scattered mountains and bent the heavens. Everything about the moment possessed a natural perfection so harmonious that the very space around him seemed to slow. Renzu tilted his head back slightly, inhaling deeply, savoring the fresh scent of the flowers, the tranquil calm of the garden, and the cool smoothness of the wood beneath his fingers. It did not take long for the little demon empress to appear in his garden. Her figure emerged softly into his line of sight. She wore a pale spring-green dress that seemed woven from morning mist, being so petite. The hem trailed lightly behind her, floating like a cloud in the wind. Her long jade-black hair was no longer loose over her shoulders, it was tied in a simple fairy bun adorned only with a few smooth round jade pearls that glimmering with cool light. Finally, when those dark eyes met Renzu's, they overflowed with a brilliance so beautiful it could steal one's soul. A beauty capable of toppling nations, an appearance that made the world tremble, combined with an almost unconscious natural charm. All of it enough to melt any man's defenses in an instant. In the past, during imperial audiences, everyone lowered their heads beneath the overwhelming pressure she exuded, not daring to raise their eyes. Today, they lowered them even further, now out of fear that, should they look up, their hearts would be irretrievably lost. "Sai!" Renzu called with a gentle smile. The little demon empress gave a small hop and landed in front of him. She frowned slightly, a shadow of worry clouding her face, and spoke slowly. Husband, do you really have to go to the profound sky continent? You said you would only stay a few more days. Amen. Renzu nodded. We've already talked about this, Sai. There are things I must take care of there. No matter what happens. Do you truly have to go? The little demon empress turned her gaze away, her voice so soft it nearly dissolved into the wind, as she struggled to conceal the storm of emotions churning in her chest. Renzu sighed. He lifted his eyes to her, and for a moment the unchanging serenity that always cloaked him seemed to ripple faintly, revealing a deep sincerity hidden beneath layers of absolute calm. Sai, he said, his tone both gentle and firm. I really do have to go. His dark, ancient well-like pupils reflected her small silhouette, and in that reflection there was something warm, almost indulgent, yet also an inevitable thread of determination. There are 2 reasons. He reached out, letting his fingers glide along her snow-white cheek, a gesture so natural it felt like the instinctive motion of someone who had touched her since before he was born. The little demon empress closed her eyes for a second, breathing deeply, as though that touch were the only thing keeping her heart steady. The first, Renzu continued, is that I want to seek some fortuitous encounters on the profound sky continent. I want to become stronger. And you know that has always been my pursuit. The little demon empress bit her lip lightly, the light in her eyes shifting, her fingers tightening slightly on the hem of her dress. And the second reason, Renzu smiled sideways, a soft, almost teasing smile, as though he were fully aware of the mischief hidden in the words before he even spoke them, is that I want to learn more about my blood family over there. She blinked, startled. He tilted his head, the smile growing lazier yet still beautiful enough to warm the garden air. Who knows? He murmured in a tone far too casual to be anything but deliberate. Maybe I have a fiancé, or something like that, waiting for me on the profound sky continent? Silence fell. The little demon empress stared at him with an expression so icy, so deadly calm, that anyone else would have been terrified. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Renzu. The way she pronounced his name was not human. It was thin, sharp, soft as falling snow yet dangerous as an unsheathed blade. Renzu raised his brows with discreet amusement, clearly enjoying her reaction. Yes. Repeat, she said slowly, her voice so controlled it seemed to crack inside. What you just said. I only said, he whispered, drawing close until their noses nearly touched, that maybe I have a fiancé there. Her gaze trembled. It was a tiny tremor, but within it blazed the sudden eruption of an entire volcano. After a few moments of silence, the little demon empress said coldly, if you love women so much, I already told you I will never restrict you. The maids of the demon imperial palace, regardless of beauty or talent, are 1 in a million. Take whichever you like. The noble ladies of the duke palaces and aristocratic families, whomever you set your eyes on, including Su Jishi of the Su family or Lan Ji of Duke Qing Palace. I can personally give them to you as concubines. Sai. Renzu grasped the little demon empress's small hand and laughed softly. Sai, my wife, do you hate being apart from me so much that you would set aside your jealousy and do something like that? The little demon empress fell silent for a moment, lips parted as if to retort, yet no sound came. Those black eyes, which normally carried the weight of 1,000 years of ice, now trembled with something that was not anger. It was fear disguised as fury. Renzu gently squeezed the cold little hand he held, intertwining their fingers as though catching a butterfly he refused to let fly away. Sai, he called again, voice low, almost a whisper against her forehead. Look at me. She slowly raised her face. There was a moist gleam at the corner of her eyes that she stubbornly refused to let fall. Do you really think that after having you, I would want any other woman? The sentence was spoken with such naturalness, such absolute certainty, that the little demon empress's heart lurched violently in her chest. Renzu brought his free hand to the nape of her neck and calmly undid the simple bun. Her jet-black hair cascaded like a waterfall of silk, falling over her small shoulders and enveloping her like a cloak of night. I was only teasing you, he confessed, a crooked, lazy smile returning to his lips. You're beautiful when you're jealous. Shameless, she murmured, but the icy edge was gone from her voice. Renzu chuckled softly, the sound resonating in his chest like distant, warm thunder. He pulled her gently until she sat straddling his lap, her legs on either side of his waist, the pale green dress opening around them like petals. I don't want any concubines. No woman in the entire illusory demon realm interests me except you, he said, his lips brushing her ear. I don't want Sujishi, nor Lanji, nor the 1,000 palace beauties. I only want you, every day, every hour, even when you're angry with me, especially when you're angry with me. The little demon empress buried her face in his shoulder, arms wrapping around his neck with an almost desperate strength. "Then don't go," she whispered against his skin, voice muffled and trembling. "Stay. I can wait longer for an heir. I can wait however long it takes. Just don't leave now." Renzu closed his eyes and held her tighter. He could feel her heart pounding rapidly against him, could smell the sweet fragrance of her hair, could feel the small, fragile warmth of the body that was now entirely his. "Sai, I'll be back in 3 months at most," he promised, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "And when I return, we'll have plenty of time together again." She lifted her face, eyes still damp but now burning with fierce determination. 3 months? She repeated, as though branding it into her very soul. "If even one extra day passes, I will personally go to the profound sky continent and drag you back by the hair." Renzu laughed again, the lightest sound the garden had ever heard. "Deal." Then, without another word, he kissed her. It was not a gentle farewell kiss. It was hungry, possessive, the kind that wanted to brand his taste onto her, so that not a single second of the coming 3 months would let her forget whom she belonged to. The little demon empress responded with the same urgency, nails digging into his back, their bodies pressed together as if trying to fuse forever. When they finally parted, breathless, she rested her forehead against his and whispered, almost inaudibly, "Come back soon, husband, because I already miss you, and you haven't even left yet." Renzu smiled against her lips. "I'll return before you can truly miss me." /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right, cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 58. Chapter 58, Preparations for the Journey to the Profound Sky Continent. 2. Christmas Tree, Merry Christmas. My dear readers, Christmas Tree, I want to sincerely thank every one of you who follows my stories, leaves comments, favorites, and supports my work. As a small way to give back, I've prepared a special extra chapter as a Christmas gift for you. This chapter is my way of showing gratitude for every read, every theory, and every emotion we've shared along the journey. You bring these stories to life far beyond the words, and that means more to me than I can put into words. May this Christmas be filled with peace, inspiration, and joyful moments. Let's continue this adventure together, with many more chapters, arcs, and emotions waiting for us in the year to come. Thank you for being here. Truly, Red Heart. Merry Christmas and happy reading. Sparkle's Open Book. A few days later, the sky above the Imperial Demon City was shrouded in gray clouds. A fine drizzle had been falling since dawn, so light that it barely wet the skin, leaving only a silvery veil hanging in the air. The petals of the spiritual flowers in the private garden drooped heavily, crystalline droplets sliding slowly along their edges, as though even they were silently weeping for the departure that drew near. Renzu was once again on the veranda, seated cross-legged on the cold wood. His hands rested calmly on his knees, palms turned upward. The black robe he wore absorbed the faint light, making him appear like a living shadow amid the rain. His long hair cascaded over his shoulders, some strands clinging to his forehead and temples from the dampness, yet he seemed not to mind. His eyes were closed. Within his body, his profound veins were filled to the brim with profound energy. Each circulation grew more violent than the last, as if something ancient and ravenous were awakening in their depths. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed inside his chest, as though an invisible chain had snapped. He had broken through to the 5th level of the Emperor Profound Realm. But that was not all. He had also reached the highest degree of mastery over the laws of darkness, becoming completely immune to the element and able to subdue it with a mere thought. The next element he chose was space, for he intended to push his spatial ancestral symbol to its limits with such an artifact. Completing this path would be considerably easier. Space was a concept that only those who reached the sovereign profound realm could truly touch. At that level, cultivators gained the ability to form small dimensional pockets, personal domains used to store important objects. Though rudimentary, these pockets already required a genuine degree of comprehension of the law of space. With that initial insight, most were able to create, distort, and manipulate three-dimensional space within a limited area, controlling positions, directions, and even the relationships between objects contained within that spatial fragment. It was simple manipulation, yes, but compared to what lower realms could achieve, its effectiveness bordered on the absurd. The most common application of this ability was teleportation, moving instantly from point A to point B simply by choosing a new location to occupy. The distance was still limited by the depth of one's understanding of the law, yet it still allowed instantaneous movement within a defined radius. a capability that completely separated monarchs from ordinary profound practitioners. From what he knew, space varied depending on the world and plane, and like any other fundamental element, it too could be ranked from high to low. The space in the realm of the gods, for example, possessed spatial laws that were infinitely denser and more complex, making it far more resistant to interference. A cultivator in the sovereign profound realm could never tear through the space of that higher plane. They simply lacked sufficient depth in comprehending the law. The reverse, however, did not apply. Any higher realm profound practitioner who fully mastered a law could easily tear through the space of lower worlds, for the spatial laws of those planes were more fragile and less refined by comparison. He, however, could ignore all such limitations thanks to the spatial ancestral symbol. With it, even the strictest laws of higher worlds could be bypassed, allowing manipulations that would normally require a much higher realm. And when he finally mastered the Tao of space and completed this stage according to the 10 extreme Taos, he would no longer even depend on the artifact. At that point, his comprehension of the law would be absolute enough to perform the same feats regardless of his cultivation level, tearing, distorting, and shaping space as he wished. That was why he had chosen this element. It might even become possible to travel to other worlds. Renzu slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were darker than usual, not merely black, but like voids that swallowed the very existence of the light around them. He exhaled slowly. A small, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. I finally advanced. It's time to say goodbye. He uncrossed his legs and stood without hurry. In the days leading up to that gray morning, he had finished everything required for his journey to the profound sky continent. The first thing he had done was inform his adoptive parents of his absence. He simply said he would be away for 3 months, wholly devoted to secluded cultivation. For them and everyone close to him within the Imperial Demon City, that explanation was more than sufficient. He had chosen his words carefully, delivering the news calmly so that no unnecessary worry would arise. The only person who knew the truth, who knew his real destination, was the little demon empress. He had decided to conceal the rest for a simple reason. It was better that way. Keeping his departure secret was the wisest choice. It protected his plans, prevented outside interference, and preserved the stability of the illusory demon realm during his absence. Whether he liked it or not, he was now the co-ruler of the illusory demon realm alongside the little demon empress. If their subjects learned he was heading to the profound sky continent, a place many still associated with the deaths of the former rulers, they would inevitably fall into paranoia, fearing history would repeat itself. With all preparations complete, all that remained was to advance his profound strength, which had been teetering on the verge of breakthrough for days, and then depart. That was also why he had postponed his departure for a few days after the wedding. Aside, of course, from enjoying the company of his wife, who seemed to want children at every possible moment. And let's be honest, what man would waste such an opportunity? It was almost comical. No one would believe that the utterly dignified and fearsome little demon empress, capable of making an entire crowd of monarchs hold their breath, would, under his care, assume positions that would make even experienced courtesans avert their eyes. Her moans alone had left all the maids of the demon imperial palace blushing like tomatoes on countless occasions. They had been good times, but now he had to make his move. Renzu walked through the corridors of the demon imperial palace. Rain still fell outside, yet inside the palace it felt as though time itself had stopped. Golden lanterns flickering softly, the faint scent of lotus flower incense mingling with the palace's unique perfume. He pushed open the double doors of the main bedroom without knocking. The little demon empress stood with her back to him, facing the large black jade mirror. She wore an imperial robe of golden silk so fine it seemed liquid, flowing over her skin as though alive. The long sleeves fell around her arms like the wings of a golden crow. Her hair, still damp from her bath, was being carefully combed by a single maid who moved with rigid, silent professionalism. Yet the instant she sensed his presence, the maid froze. She bowed so low her forehead nearly touched the floor and, without daring to lift her eyes, hurriedly retreated, closing the door behind her with almost reverent care. Deep down, she simply didn't want to be forcibly thrown out by the little demon empress, because whenever the two of them were alone, Her Majesty tolerated no one nearby, and made that very clear. The room now belonged solely to them. The little demon empress, who had already noticed his arrival, did not turn immediately. She continued staring at her own reflection in the black jade mirror, lifting her chin a little higher than necessary. Renzu smirked. 3 steps were all it took to stand behind her. His arms encircled her waist before she could even pretend to resist. Her petite body stiffened for a moment, out of old habit of authority, then yielded, as if she had never truly had a choice. You kept me waiting, husband. I suppose you've succeeded in advancing your profound strength and are here to bid this empress farewell, she said expressionlessly, her gaze fixed on their reflections. Yes, that's right. And as we agreed when this moment came, it would be time for me to leave. Renzu sighed, his voice low and tinged with resignation. Won't you give your husband one last hug? The little demon empress huffed, yet she was already rising onto her tiptoes, turning within his embrace. A second later, she jumped. Her legs wrapped around his waist, her arms locked around his neck with enough force to leave marks. Renzu caught her easily, his hands firm on her thighs, feeling the fabric slide slightly beneath his fingers. 3 months, she whispered against his neck, trying to sound threatening. Trying. Her voice, however, came out muffled, trembling at the edges. Not 1 day more. If you're even a second late, I'll come fetch you myself. Even if I have to drag you back by the hair in front of the entire profound sky continent. Understood, my empress. As I've been assuring you these past few days, I'll be fine. There's no one in this world who can kill me if I decide to escape. You have to trust my ability to get away. You know I've mastered a powerful, profound art capable of manipulating space itself. Renzu had spent days trying to ease her worries, even revealing that he still possessed the ability to teleport, and that it did not stem from an artifact, but from a profound technique he himself had mastered. It was technically a half-truth. He did indeed possess an artifact superior even to one of the 7 heavenly profound treasures, capable of granting the power to move through space. But he believed she didn't need to know that there were many secrets he could not share with anyone, not even with his wife. No matter how much he trusted her, some things remained beyond reach, untouchable. Caution was not a whim, it was a principle. A villain worthy of the name could not allow himself to trust blindly, not in his own feelings, and certainly not in those around him. Hearing his words, the little demon empress lifted her face. Her eyes glistened, brimming with emotion almost tangible. Don't you dare die. Don't you dare get hurt. Don't you dare. Her voice wavered for a moment. Don't you dare look at another woman for longer than 3 breaths. Renzu chuckled softly, that low, husky laugh that made her chest vibrate. Sai. What? You're crying. I am not. She answered far too quickly, burying her face in his shoulder as if she could hide the tears there, as if he didn't notice everything about her. He held her tighter, feeling her heart pounding frantically against his, fragile yet fierce, like a deer caught in headlights. I'll come back, he murmured, kissing her temple, then her eyelid, then the corner of her mouth. I'll return before you can truly miss me. She let out a trembling huff, half sob, half anger. Idiot. I've missed you since the second you said you were leaving. Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle, it was pure need. Desperation. Hunger. As if she wanted to brand his very soul with her taste. Her teeth grazed his lower lip, her nails scratched the back of his neck. Renzu returned it with equal intensity. One hand cradling her nape, the other gripping her thigh hard enough to leave marks that would last the full 3 months. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, foreheads pressed together, noses touching, breaths mingling. Take care of yourself, she whispered, voice low and shaking. And come back to this empress soon. Because if you don't, I swear I'll destroy that entire continent just to find you. Renzu smiled, that slow, dangerous, absurdly tender smile he showed only to her. I promise. He set her gently on the floor, but she didn't immediately release his neck. She clung there, as if she could stop the world from taking him, as if she could lock him in the room and never let him leave. At last, she took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and stepped back. The Tsundra glare returned, cold and arrogant. Yet her cheeks still burned with a red impossible to hide. Go already, she muttered, crossing her arms and turning her face away. Before this empress changes her mind and chains you to the bed. Renzu let out another husky laugh, leaned in, and stole one final kiss. Quick, light, and insolent. Just to tease her. I'm going then, Tsai. He turned and vanished in a blink of absolute darkness. The room fell empty. The little demon empress stood there for long seconds, staring at the spot where he had been. Then very softly, almost inaudible, come back soon, you idiot. This empress already misses you. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right. Cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 59. Chapter 59, 5 million kilometers off course. The world dissolved in a snap of silence. Renzu could, without any effort, teleport to any point within the range of his spiritual perception. A range so vast that it easily encompassed the entire illusory demon realm. Even so, that ability had its limits. To cross the boundaries of the continent, He had to rely solely on the ancestral spatial symbol, tearing through space and hurling himself as far as possible in a single predetermined direction. Fortunately, he had been careful enough to ask the golden crow exactly where she had sensed the presence of the blazing chicken, the affectionate and slightly offensive nickname she used for the divine phoenix. With that information, he at least had a rough bearing toward the profound sky continent, enough to avoid crossing the void completely blind. After teleporting to the extreme edge of the illusory demon realm, Renzu did not waste a single second. He didn't even glance at the dull landscape marking the continent's border. Before the echo of his displacement had faded, he was already gone again, shooting forward in a straight line across the vast expanses of the world. The space around him shattered like cracked glass. Black fissures spread in sinuous veins, twisting around him like starving serpents. One step, and he no longer belonged to the illusory demon realm. Another step, and the very air changed, became heavier, damper, carrying the salty scent of distant seas and the deep aroma of ancient forests. He had arrived. The space behind him resealed with a muffled sigh, as though the world itself were trying to erase every trace of his passage. Renzu emerged high in the sky, so high that the clouds spread far below his feet, forming a silent white sea stretching to the horizon. The biting wind struck his face like icy blades. He narrowed his eyes. Did I make it? The doubt wasn't born of insecurity but habit, the kind of caution people like him cultivated until it became instinct. Renzu faintly frowned and expanded his spiritual perception. His consciousness spread in all directions like an invisible web, sweeping over mountains, rivers, forests, trade routes, city walls, and entire metropolises. Nothing escaped his silent, meticulous scrutiny. For a few moments, he remained perfectly still, contemplating the invisible map forming inside his mind. Then his eyes gleamed. He had detected a city not far away. Without hesitation, he simply ceased to be there. During the movement, too fast for any mortal eye to follow, Renzu raised his hand to the spatial ring on his finger. A discreet flash glimmered, and an elegant black mask of refined material appeared in his palm. With a natural, almost automatic gesture, he placed it over his face, concealing most of his features. His flawless appearance drew too much attention, too many questions, too many problems. He had no interest in any of them. When his feet touched the ground of the city, the mask was already perfectly fitted, hiding the identity he had no intention of revealing anytime soon. Renzu walked through the city unhurriedly beneath the fine drizzle that made the streets quieter than usual. The gentle aura emanating from his body made the surrounding air feel cleaner, lighter, as though the rain itself hesitated to touch him. Passers-by glanced at him, unable to understand why, yet instinctively drawn to the unusual figure. Some looked away in embarrassment, others stared too long without realizing they were doing so. The city was large enough to be bustling, yet small enough that every voice echoed with a certain clarity. Simple buildings, wet wooden rooftops, colorful banners hanging from corner posts, and a faint scent of spices and damp earth mingling with the wind. A wooden sign hung above the main street, Gray Cloud City. He walked for a few minutes along the main road before stopping in front of a simple stall set up beneath a faded blue awning. A thin old man with a sparse white beard and lively eyes was arranging a pile of trinkets. Cracked jade talismans, rusted swords, vials of dubious quality pills, some dried herbs, and a pair of boots that looked like they had survived 3 wars. "Good morning, young master," the old man greeted, his gaze that of someone who had lived on the streets for decades and knew how to recognize wealth and power. Before him stood a man with an immortal bearing and elegantly luxurious dark robes. He stood out as one of the wealthiest. Knowing he could make a quick fortune with courtesy, he continued, "Looking for anything specific or just browsing?" Renzu tilted his head slightly. "A bit of both," he replied calmly. "Tell me, old sir, where exactly am I?" The old man laughed, flashing yellow teeth. "Ah, young master, you must be joking with this old man, yes? We're in Gray Cloud City, of course. In Subway Country, Azure Cloud Continent." Renzu nodded slowly, his gaze narrowing as he absorbed the information. He was on the Azure Cloud Continent. For a moment, his heart wavered. He had missed his target by 5 million kilometers. As far as he knew, the Azure Cloud Continent was precisely that distance from both the profound Sky Continent and the illusory Demon Realm. Its overall profound cultivation level was slightly lower than the illusory Demon Realm, though it boasted 3 dominant powers: the Heavenly Frustration Sect, the Divine Palace of the 7 Stars, and the Ascending Heavenly Sword Sect. The leaders of those 3 sects had reached the local peak, the 9th level of the Sovereign Profound Realm. Nothing that could threaten him. The direction the Golden Crow had given had only been roughly that way. And apparently, roughly became a dangerously elastic concept when applied to planetary distances. But the shock lasted only 3 breaths. On the 4th, the corner of his mouth lifted into a crooked, sharp, almost predatory smile. There were plenty of opportunities on this continent. He could take advantage of them instead of heading straight to the profound sky continent as originally planned. Sooner or later, he would return to explore this place anyway. Azure Cloud Continent. He repeated slowly, as if tasting the name on his tongue. Renzu picked up a small jade talisman from the pile of junk, twirling it between his fingers. It was trash. Not a wisp of spiritual energy. But the old man watched him with gleaming, almost pleading eyes. How much? He asked, more out of politeness than interest. 3 yellow profound coins. The old man answered far too quickly, like a dog wagging its tail. Renzu smiled behind the mask and returned the talisman to the pile. Without warning, he withdrew a small leather pouch from his spatial ring. When he opened it, an intense glow, pure purple profound coins, illuminated the old man's face. The man swallowed hard, his hands trembling just from looking. Keep it all, Renzu said, placing 5 purple profound coins into the old man's palm. The latter nearly cried out. And answer a few questions. The old man almost dropped the coins. As many questions as you want, young master. You can even ask my age on my wedding night if you like. Renzu chuckled softly. A low, dangerous sound. Nothing that intimate. I just want to know, have you ever heard of the Saint Dr. Yungu? I'd like any useful information about his whereabouts. The old man opened and closed his mouth several times like a fish out of water, trying to decide whether to answer immediately or first double-check if those purple profound coins were real. His hands shook so badly that 3 nearly slipped through his gnarled fingers, but he quickly clutched them to his chest, guarding them as if the heavens themselves might try to steal them. He swallowed so loudly that Renzu almost heard it. The Saint Dr. Yungu? The old man repeated in shock, as though someone had just uttered a forbidden legend. His eyes narrowed slightly, not out of malice, but from the instinct of a man who had spent his whole life sniffing out secrets on the streets. That's not a name you hear every day, young master. I know something that might interest you. Renzu tilted his head, his voice low and smooth as dark velvet. Go on. The old man took a deep breath, glanced around as if speaking important information required checking for eavesdroppers, and leaned in until his wrinkled nose nearly touched Renzu's chest. They say he cured an incurable poison just by looking at the patient. He didn't charge a thing. Nothing. Then he simply vanished. And where is 100 Leaf City? Renzu asked calmly. The old man nearly tripped over himself bowing, pointing eagerly northeast down the street. If you follow the main road out of the city for 24 li, young master, you'll reach the 7 Waters Plain. From there, just continue along the caravan route and— No! Renzu gently but firmly interrupted. I want the fastest route, not the safest. The old man blinked twice, then smiled nervously. The fast route is simple. Head straight through those dark hills in the distance. They'll try to stop you from passing, but I doubt they'll succeed. After half an hour over them, you'll be at the border of the next province. From there, 100 Leaf City is only 1 mountain away. Renzu gave a short, satisfied nod. Perfect. As he began to turn, the old man stumbled over his own desperation. Why, young master? And this, all of this, he raised his trembling hand with the purple profound coins, is really, for me. Renzu glanced over his shoulder, an almost imperceptible glint passing through his black eyes. His voice came out low, calm, with that natural charm that made it impossible to contradict him. I pay for what I want, he replied simply. And I wanted quick information. The old man nearly wept. Renzu added lightly, almost lazily. Consider it also a thank you for not trying to deceive me. That would have been inconvenient. The old man's face paled instantly, but his smile remained rock solid. Oh, of course. This old man would never dare. Renzu observed the old man for another moment, weighing an entire lifetime in a single glance. Then, as calmly as he breathed, he asked, one last question. Do you know where I can get a more complete map of the continent? The old man looked like he might faint, not from the question but from the fact that he was still useful. Map? Of course, of course. He straightened so fast he nearly fell backward. The Pavilion of 1,000 Branches. It's at the end of the main street, right after the market square. If anywhere in this backwater has a decent map, it's there. The old man leaned in a little closer, as if afraid he was committing a sin by speaking too loudly. But be careful. They like to fleece anyone who looks rich. Renzu smiled behind the mask, a slow, warm smile that carried far too many shadows to be truly friendly. Let them try. The old man swallowed hard. And thank you for the information. Renzu finished softly before vanishing. There was no flash, no sound, no wind. He simply ceased to exist where he had stood. All that remained for the old man was displaced air and the sensation that something far greater than himself had passed by. Renzu reappeared an instant later in front of the pavilion of 1,000 branches. A 3-story building with curved rooftops and silver lanterns swaying in the drizzle. The wide doors were dark wood, carved with an emblem of intertwined roots. Smaller cities treated such places as prestigious pavilions to him. It looked like a shop that tried too hard to seem important. He entered without a sound. The interior smelled of dry parchment, fresh ink, and faint arrogance. Polished jade shelves displayed artifacts, jade scrolls, compasses, divination stones, and maps hung like paintings. An attendant in pale blue looked up the moment Renzu crossed the threshold. Any greeting died in her throat the instant his aura brushed hers. Gentle, elegant, yet undeniably overwhelming. She bowed instinctively. Welcome to the pavilion of 1,000 branches. Esteemed customer. How may I assist you? Renzu walked silently to the counter. I want to buy the most complete map you have of the Azure Cloud continent, he said without preamble. The attendant blinked in surprise but recovered quickly. We have 3 versions, sir, the common map, the reinforced map, and the imperial map. She moistened her lips. The imperial map was recently updated by the cartographers of the Palace of the 7 Stars. It shows sects, territorial borders, forbidden zones, and city routes. It's the best and most popular among merchants. Renzu lightly tapped the counter. I'll take that one. The attendant swallowed. The price was exorbitant, but she sensed something in his tone that discouraged any tricks. With careful hands, she withdrew a carved wooden cylinder from a compartment sealed with a formation. The imperial map of the Azure Cloud continent, she said, offering it with both hands. Renzu didn't ask the price. He simply withdrew a single purple profound coin from his spatial ring and placed it on the counter. The attendant nearly choked. The coin was worth dozens of times the map's cost. Keep the change, he said, taking the cylinder. Consider it an incentive for quick service. The attendant froze, mouth agape. Renzu turned and left the pavilion exactly as he had entered, like a ghost. He emerged far above the clouds, so high that the world below looked like a gray cotton carpet stretching to the horizon. The cold wind whipped his black robes. He snapped open the wooden cylinder with a dry crack and unrolled the imperial map in midair, letting his profound energy hold it suspended and motionless before him. The map glowed with soft crimson and golden lines, main routes marked like luminous rivers winding across the continent. It was extraordinarily detailed, far more than any ordinary cultivator should have access to. It traced direct paths, trade routes, secret passages used by veteran caravans, and the wide roads linking cities to capitals. For a merchant, this is a treasure, he murmured, his gaze scanning tiny markings. Small symbols indicated spiritual forests, rest stops, taxation gates, forbidden hunting zones, and even territories where dominant profound beasts prowled. It was complete, absurdly complete. But it wasn't the safe or profitable locations that caught his attention. It was a point marked in black ink. The Cloud's End Cliff, located on Divine Rest Mountain. Considered the deadliest place among the 4 mortal regions of the Azure Cloud continent, that cliff was also known as the Death God's Cemetery. Across countless eras, the number of people who had fallen into that abyss was simply incalculable. He knew that down below lay a separate dimension stretching over 40,000 kilometers deep. Anyone who fell from that cliff would be hurled straight into a region saturated with extreme dark energy. But the environment itself wasn't what interested him. What he truly sought was the netherworld Adumbra flower, a rare and extremely evil object. That flower only bloomed in dark, frigid places and required a full 24 years to flower once. After blooming, it withered in just 3 days, forcing anyone interested to wait another 24 years for the next cycle. It was considered the most terrifying flower in existence. Simply approaching it allowed its sinister dark aura to invade the body and corrode the soul. At best, one fell into prolonged coma, at worst they turned into an undead. And if one's profound strength was too low, death was instantaneous. He wanted the flower because he had specific plans for it. In fact, he intended to collect every single one in that abyss. Moreover, he planned to bring Enijia along, for as the heaven-slaying demon emperor sword and daughter of the evil god, she represented one of the greatest opportunities on this continent. And if he obtained all the netherworld Adumbra flowers, Scumche would never be able to revive Jasmine. Additionally, he also intended to acquire the darkness seed that existed there. Combined with the lightning seed he had torn from the golden crow, he would have 2 in hand. Unfortunately, both would be useless to him personally. His plans for them involved nothing more than hindering Scumche's growth. Renzu stored the map with a flick of his fingers. The wooden cylinder vanished into his spatial ring, as if it had never existed. Then, as though the world itself had pulled an invisible trigger, he moved. A dense black flash, like living ink, erupted around him, and in the next instant, he was gone. The air where he had been warped, creating a silent ripple that expanded in a perfect circle before dissipating like luminous dust. He tore through the sky so fast that he left behind only a fleeting trail of dark lightning, as though a colossal serpent had lashed across the firmament in a single whip. He flew swiftly toward his destination. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right. Cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile. 60. Chapter 60 Cloud End Cliff. On the Divine Rest Mountain, the Cloud's End Cliff was the deadliest place among the 4 deadly regions of the Azure Cloud continent. This cliff had also been called the Death God's Cemetery more times than anyone could count. Over countless years, the number of people who had fallen into this abyss was simply incalculable. In fact, throughout the entire recorded history of the Azure Cloud continent, countless individuals had been thrown from Cloud's End Cliff or had attempted to climb it, yet not a single one had ever returned alive. This included even those unparalleled and godlike existences that ordinary people regarded as supreme monarchs. Moreover, this was no secret, it was common knowledge across the entire Azure Cloud continent. After flying for a few minutes, Renzu landed silently on the edge of Cloud's End Cliff. He leaned his upper body slightly forward. Above him stretched the endless azure vault of the sky, beneath him lay an endless abyss. At that moment, it felt as though he stood on the boundary between heaven and hell, with the only sounds remaining in the world being the rhythm-data binding of his own breathing and the beating of his heart. He said nothing. With profound indifference reflected in his pitch-black pupils, he silently gazed into the unfathomable, eternal abyss before him. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he bent his body slightly and simply jumped. His figure plummeted like a meteor torn from the heavens, tearing through the air as it plunged toward the endless void below, where not even light dared to reach. In the blink of an eye, he had already descended 3,000 meters, and his surroundings had become a sea of darkness. He raised his head and found that he could no longer see even the faintest trace of light in the space above. Darkness instinctively evokes fear in human beings, let alone the absolute darkness found in a deep abyss. Yet his falling speed did not slow in the slightest. Instead, it grew faster with every passing moment. Golden crow flames ignited in his hands, illuminating the pitch-black world of the abyss. But beneath the radiance of the sunbird's flames, he still saw only layers of darkness, with no end in sight to the abyss stretching beneath him. Knowing it would be of little use, just as he had suspected, Renzu simply extinguished the burning golden crow flames and continued his full-speed descent. In the history of the Azure Cloud continent, the countless profound practitioners who had attempted to descend Cloud's End Cliff had always done so extremely slowly and cautiously. Thus, he was undoubtedly the first person to hurl himself recklessly into this cliff, the most terrifying abyss on the entire Azure Cloud continent, or perhaps even the rest of the world. The wind whistled past his ears as the air gradually grew darker and colder. Amid the howling dark wind, he continued to plummet thousands of feet. Only then, during that seemingly endless fall, did a familiar sensation touch his skin. A strange, dense, cold yet unmistakable aura. Dark devil profound energy. Anyone else would have mistaken it for ordinary aura, the kind that naturally accumulates at the bottom of deep abysses. But to him, who had cultivated the law of darkness to its utmost extremes, a single instant was enough to recognize its true nature. It was profound dark energy, the essence that sustained the devil's path, as distinct from and opposed to the divine path as night is today. This energy did not merely strengthen those who cultivated it, it shaped, corroded, and twisted their personalities. It was said that the more powerful a profound practitioner of the devil's path became, the more evil deeds they had committed and the more lives they had reaped to bolster their own existence. The sound of the wind grew increasingly strange. He had already been falling for some time. By his estimation, he had dropped more than 30,000 meters, yet there was still no sign of reaching the bottom. After falling several more kilometers without reaching the abyss floor, at a certain moment his body unconsciously passed through some kind of checkpoint. In the next instant, it was as though he had entered an entirely different world. An extreme cold struck him immediately. A dense, icy, and deeply malevolent aura surged toward him from all directions, attempting to pierce his meridians and deep veins. At the same time, a powerful attractive force rose from the void below, as though countless invisible hands made of pure darkness were trying to seize him and drag him into the depths. In that instant, he understood why anyone who fell into Cloud's End Cliff could never return. It was certain death. This exceptionally terrifying dark devil aura was something the profound practitioners of this world could not resist. Even if they were strong enough to withstand it temporarily, With such a horrifying attractive force, escape was impossible. This also meant that anyone who came into contact with the dark world within the deep abyss would be instantly pulled downward. There was no chance of resistance, much less escape. But he was no ordinary failed profound practitioner. The moment the attractive force tried to drag him down, Renzu reacted instantly. He gathered his profound energy and released a torrent of pure darkness, far more refined than the corrupt diabolical energy permeating the surroundings. Upon colliding with that corrupt darkness, his own energy effortlessly neutralized it, simultaneously dissipating the attractive force trying to pull him downward. Enveloped in his own dark protection, he continued descending silently for several thousand more meters until, finally, his body collided with something extremely hard. The impact echoed like muffled thunder, yet his exceptionally powerful body endured it without the slightest difficulty. The surface beneath his feet was solid and firm. This could only mean one thing. He had at last reached the bottom of the abyss. He crouched slightly, and his hand touched the cold, rigid ground. The sensation that coursed through him was clear. This material was even harder than the toughest profound steel he had ever encountered in the illusory demon realm. Renzu raised his gaze and, in that moment, understood the true nature of the place he had fallen into. This was not merely an abyss. It was a world so terrifying that no ordinary person could even imagine its existence. In truth, not even someone as powerful as the little demon empress or Duke Ming would survive here. If they were thrown into this dark domain, they would undoubtedly perish within 15 minutes. Though he himself had no difficulty handling the surrounding diabolical aura, he knew full well that others would not be so fortunate. The dark energy of this world did not merely devour vitality and corrode the soul, it also aggressively suppressed profound energy. It was a realm designed for killing, a domain where darkness itself possessed will and hunger, yet he was not worried about that. He had come down here with a purpose, and he was far from finished. Renzu summoned the golden crow flames once more, shaping them into a small sun that floated just behind his head. The golden light tore through the absolute darkness, illuminating a radius of 100 meters around him. An act that, in this dark world, seemed almost a defiance of the very nature of the place. Beneath his feet, the ground was flat, marked only by occasional collisions and hard, metal-like irregularities. Everything around him was black, so black that not even the golden flames could reveal any color beyond that oppressive darkness. The air was still, far too cold to belong to the world of the living. Renzu let out a soft sigh. He knew that if he proceeded using ordinary methods, he would waste precious time in this hostile environment. Thus, he decided to hasten things. Gathering his maximum speed, he turned his body into a blur of shadow trailed by the golden sun behind him. At the same time, he expanded his spiritual perception, one of the few abilities not completely suppressed by the darkness. With that, he tore forward through the dark terrain as though ripping through space itself. In a single instant, guided by the faintest signals his perception detected, his body shot in a specific direction and began descending even deeper into the abyss. Roar! At that moment, a short distance away, a dull roar suddenly sounded. That roar came from extremely far away, possibly thousands of kilometers distant. HSSS. AOOUU. Roar. Following that terrifying roar, a great number of roars echoed one after another from even farther away. In an instant, the previously deathly silent dark world began to tremble slightly, and even space itself quaked. Yet within Renzu's pitch-black pupils there was only the deepest indifference. He knew that the abyss harbored a vast number of ancestral demonic beasts, and even the weakest among them reached the divine origin realm, what profound practitioners of this world called the divine profound realm, the highest known level of cultivation in their limited understanding. However, he understood that in the realm of the gods, that level amounted to nothing more than cannon fodder. His current strength was more than enough to kill any of those beasts with ease. Still, he had no interest in wasting time on them now. Thus, he did not even blink. He simply continued his journey, moving at maximum speed, so fast that none of the beasts could catch even a glimpse of his shadow. In the direction he traveled, the path remained completely silent from beginning to end, as though none of those dark, ferocious creatures existed there. Not a single one. After advancing through the darkness for several minutes, Renzu frowned. The miniature sun formed by the intense, domineering golden crow flames had suddenly become inconvenient. With a mere thought, he dismissed it, instantly extinguishing the golden radiance that had swallowed everything within 100 meters. Absolute darkness returned as though it were alive. Yet not entirely. His eyes swept the darkness ahead. Unless he was mistaken, a faint purple glow was emanating from somewhere far in front of him. The light was extremely dim and shallow, almost non-existent. But in a world devoured by endless darkness, the mere presence of any luminosity was unquestionably abnormal. Light! He murmured to himself, almost unconsciously. Had he not extinguished the golden flames, he very likely would never have noticed that glow. Renzu frowned and moved toward the light, traveling quickly yet calmly. After covering an immense distance, the purple hue finally seemed within reach. Then, using his maximum speed, he crossed the remaining distance and finally arrived. What appeared before his eyes was a world filled with enchanting purple light. Countless fantastical flower stalks swayed amid this purple radiance. Branches of bewitching flowers bloomed proudly on deep purple stems. Every petal of these flowers resembled brilliant purple jade, emitting a bright purple light and a faint, indistinct purple mist that seemed to rise from the depths of the underworld, floating around them. The purple light filling the space came from these seductive purple flowers. Within this unparalleled and terrifying world of darkness, his own flames could only illuminate a 100-meter radius. Yet these alluring flowers clearly lit up a vast area, their radiance incredibly sharp and undimmed by the darkness. Renzu stood still, and his dark pupils seemed to shimmer faintly. As someone who had completely mastered the miracle of life, he recognized those seductive flowers almost instantly. These enchanting purple flowers were none other than netherworld Audumbra flowers. Tens of thousands of fully bloomed netherworld Audumbra flowers swayed before him, forming a gigantic sea of netherworld Audumbra flowers. It was as though he had been thrust from a dark world of death into a purple dimension. Yet the netherworld Audumbra flower was not only incomparably bewitching, its most singular and most terrifying characteristic was its ability to steal souls. Fortunately, Renzu was fully aware of this and had prepared in advance. After all, a flower of this very type existed in the Moonslaughter Devil Nest, the place he had originally intended to visit before accidentally ending up on the Azure Cloud continent. His preparation. Knowing that many spiritual herbs required specific harvesting conditions or carried side effects capable of killing the careless, Renzu had created a profound art that rendered him immune to any form of damage or side effect, while also replicating the same principle as the Sky Poison Pearl's perfect harvesting ability. This art completely enveloped the herb in his own aura, preventing any harm that might reduce its efficacy. His creation could perform exactly the same process. He had named it Heavenly Will Crystal Body. The only weakness of this profound art was its short duration. And although it was described as immune to all damage, Renzu seriously doubted it could withstand a strike from a profound practitioner capable of obliterating an entire planet with a single blow. Still, it was undeniably a miraculous profound art and one of his greatest trump cards. He had invested an enormous amount of time in its creation. In fact, it had taken him an entire year from the moment he began developing profound arts to support his various plans. With a single thought, Renzu activated the Heavenly Will Crystal Body. There was no explosion of light, no thunderous boom, no exaggerated phenomenon. Just a silent, absolute transformation so perfect it seemed to defy the most fundamental laws of the world. His skin completely lost its mortal texture. Every cell, every strand of energy, every particle composing his body turned into translucent, lustrous crystal, as though the firmament itself had carved him. It was a pure, limpid glow with no defined color, an inner radiance that flowed beneath his crystallized skin like rivers of liquid light, reflecting the surrounding world as though he were a living jewel. Darkness could no longer touch him, the extreme cold could not penetrate him, the soul-devouring aura of the netherworld Audumbra flowers did not even dare approach. Having done this, he immediately began walking toward the sea of flowers. /N. Did you enjoy the chapter? Then you should know that over on my Patreon you can read up to 20 chapters ahead for just $5. And yes, for that price you also get full access to all of my content. That's right, cheaper than a snack, and with way more drama, action, and guaranteed emotional damage. The link is right below. See you there. My Patreon. Patreon.com/fanficnovels. Thank you so much for your support. You make all of this worthwhile.
Every novel listed in the description comes with permanent access to the audiobook on Telegram. You pay once, and if the novel is still ongoing, you'll receive all future updates automatically. No extra cost. Choose your novel from the description, then DM me on Telegram, WhatsApp, or Discord. After payment via PayPal, Ko-Fi, or Patreon, you'll get instant access. Simple, secure, lifetime listening. Guys, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Your support means a lot.